Chapter 857. Guessing. For a long time, the Qin family was not the only major shareholder behind the Chang'an Group. Therefore, although Qin Chang'an was pushed to be the helmsman of the Chang'an Group, and the Qin family was also the biggest shareholder of the Chang'an Group, the other major shareholders behind them could not be underestimated. Therefore, when they encountered all kinds of major events, they could only make decisions after discussion, not by Qin Chang'an alone. Everyone was clear that the reason why the Chang'an Group could become so powerful today was not only because of Qin Chang'an's ability, but also because of the complicated background and connections of many major shareholders behind the Chang'an Group. Therefore, the Chang'an Group was not only the Qin family's Chang'an Group, but also everyone's Chang'an Group. It was only because Qin Chang'an was at the forefront that people subconsciously thought it was the Qin family's Chang'an Group. In that case, the Chang'an system would not only belong to the Qin family, and Qin Chang'an would not really sacrifice himself for the Chang'an system. He still had to think about the Qin family. Moreover, before the Chang'an system was established, Qin Chang'an had already established a family business for the Qin family. Gongsun and Bao Fan belonged to the Qin family. Gongsun could be considered as Qin Chang'an's most trusted subordinate. Gongsun was in charge of most of the things in the Qin family. Apart from Gongsun, Qin Chang'an had 3 other trusted subordinates, who were all placed in more important positions. They were Bao Fan in Shanghai, He Yong in Shenzhen, and Song Shixin in the northeast. Although Qin Chang'an was in trouble now, Gongsun was still there. Therefore, he could still suppress these 3 people. If Gongsun was not there, people might have already been moved. Currently, Bao Fan had gained Qin Shing's trust. Song Shixin in the northeast was restrained by Zhuang Zhou, so he dared not act rashly. Only He Yong in Shenzhen was the most worrying. He was in charge of the Qin family's interests in Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Hong Kong, and Macau. If he was not obedient, the Qin family would suffer heavy losses. Last time, when Zhao Anji went to Shenzhen, she chatted with He Yong a lot. At that time, He Yong's attitude was very firm, which was that he would live and die together with the Qin family. However, after Qin Chang'an's accident, He Yong, who was in Shenzhen, made the biggest move. This made Gongsun very unhappy. Even if Bao Fan, He Yong, and Song Shixin did not have any ideas, who could control the group of people below them. Since ancient times, many great figures had risen to power because they were forcefully pushed up by their subordinate. The most famous example was Zhao Kuangyin, the founder of the Song dynasty, who wore the yellow robe. Therefore, it was not unreasonable for Bao Fan to ask Qin Shing to meet the group of people below him. As the heir of the Qin family, he had to show up in person to control the situation. The location of the meeting was arranged by Bao Fan. Chang Baji and the rest were a little worried. After all, it was different from the past. Any kind of danger could appear, so they had to be careful. Brother Wu and Ba, he brought 4 bodyguards with him. These bodyguards were the Qin family's trusted aides and were not from Shanghai. The address was a high-standard restaurant at Dianshan Lake in Qingpu. Qin Shing was escorted to Dianshan Lake by Chang Baji and the others. On the way, he received a call from Xue Qinyan, saying that she had returned to Shanghai. She asked when they had time to meet. Qin Shing said that night and Xue Qinyan agreed. Dianshan Lake was a lively place in Qingpu. Qin Shing had been to the Zujiajiao Anlu Hotel here before, which was a relatively top hotel in Shanghai. When their 3 cars arrived at the entrance of the hotel, Bao Fan had been waiting for a long time with his 5 subordinates who had enough weight. Bao Fan personally opened the door for Qin Shing and welcomed him with a smile. "Young master, thank you." Qin Shing patted Bao Fan's shoulder politely. "Uncle Bao, sorry to keep you waiting. It's a little far." In front of so many outsiders, Qin Shing still had to give Bao Fan enough respect. They could call each other brothers in private, but if he called Bao Fan Brother Bao, it would be too casual. Uncle Bao was more suitable. "Young master, please come in." Bao Fan stretched out his hand respectfully. At this time, Bao Fan's 5 confidants looked at Qin Shing at the same time and said respectfully, "Young master." Qin Shing nodded at them with a smile on his face, which could be regarded as a greeting. He was neither close nor distant. Although he really wanted to know what these people were thinking, it was not the time. Bao Fan knew that although Qin Shing had been in Shanghai for so many years, he did not like the cuisines in Jiangsu, Zhejiang and Shanghai. He preferred Sichuan and Hunan cuisines, so he had ordered dishes in advance. Most of them were relatively spicy. Fortunately, this was a restaurant that he liked to entertain VIPs, and they could cook all kinds of cuisines. The private room was very elegant. There was a beautiful woman playing the zither to liven things up. There was a tea artist waiting by the side. There were a few imitation antiques placed around. At least the atmosphere was not bad. In addition, the huge floor-to-ceiling windows facing Dianshan Lake made the atmosphere really good. As the heir of the Qin family, Qin Shing naturally sat on the main seat. Bao Fan and Chang Baji sat on both sides of Qin Shing. Brother Wu and Ba He did not sit at the table. In fact, Brother Wu was qualified to sit at the table. He just wanted to take care of Ba He, so the two of them drank tea at the back, and at the same time, they were alert to everyone present. "Everyone, I think I don't need to introduce this person next to me. Some of you may have met him before, but this is the first time for some of you, but you will be familiar with him in the future. Let us welcome young master back to Shanghai." Bao Fan used a language that was not particularly official. The crowd applauded one after another. Most of them were sizing up Qin Shing, the future successor of the Qin family and the current backbone of the Qin family. Some of them had seen Qin Shing before. After all, Qin Shing had caused quite a stir in Shanghai. Some of them were in charge of other affairs and had not seen Qin Shing before. It was not until today that they finally saw him in person. "Young master, let me introduce you first." After the applause ended, Bao Fan took the initiative to say. He was the person in charge of Shanghai, so naturally, he had to introduce these people to Qin Shing. Qin Shing smiled and nodded, waiting for Bao Fan to introduce them. Bao Fan spoke slowly. Every time he finished introducing a person, that person would stand up and greet Qin Shing respectfully. Qin Shing walked over and shook hands with them unhurriedly. This was already very polite, and he could get close to everyone present. After the introduction, the waiter had already served all the dishes. At this time, Bao Fan also took the opportunity to say, "Since everyone already knows our young master, let him say a few words." Everyone applauded again. Qin Shing stood up happily. Although it was the first time he had encountered such a scene after returning to the Qin family, he had more or less experienced it before. Even if he had not eaten pork, he had seen a pig run. It was just that during this period of time when he returned to the Qin family, he had never taken the initiative to deal with the affairs of the Qin family. This time, if it was not for Uncle Gongsuan's reminder, Qin Shing thought that he would not do it for a while. "Shanghai can be considered as my second hometown. I went to university in Shanghai and I also worked in Shanghai before. After staying here for so many years, I am full of feelings for this place, so I like Shanghai very much. Most of you also know that I used to live with my grandfather, and it has not been long since I returned to the Qin family. However, as the successor of the Qin family, I have to bear this responsibility and pressure. Moreover, now the Qin family is in turmoil, so I have to do all these. Shanghai is an important town of the Qin family, and Uncle Bao is the direct descendant that the old man absolutely trusts. He is also a person that I respect. We have been through a lot before, and some of you also knew me at that time, so Uncle Bao and I know each other very well. We have been friends for a long time, and Uncle Bao is also the closest person to me in the Qin family. I have absolute trust in Uncle Bao, so this time when I come back to Shanghai, I take the initiative to meet with you." Qin Shing spoke with fervor and assurance, without any pressure at all. It could be said that these words were at his fingertip. At least, he grasped the atmosphere and strength skillfully. After saying these words, Qin Shing continued, "As we all know, the Qin family is in turmoil now, and many people are also anxious. I don't know what others think, and I don't want to guess, but both the Qin family and I have absolute trust in Shanghai. Whether in the past or in the future, Shanghai will be the absolute center of the Qin family. As long as the Qin family gets better and better, we will definitely not treat you badly. Of course, these words are just my words. In this special period, you also have a lot of questions and want to say. Today, you can say what you want to say. Let's take it as a chat between friends. Don't be too shy, and don't care about each other's identities. Thank you." Okay. After Qin Shing finished speaking, Bao Fan was the first to applaud. The others also applauded one after another. It could be said that Qin Shing's speech was logical, sincere, and progressive, which made people applaud. It also made people understand Qin Shing's ability. If he was just a rich playboy who only knew how to squander, they would naturally be worried about the future of the Qin family. After the applause stopped, Bao Fan raised his glass and said, "As for the next words, let's talk while eating. Now, let's toast to young master together and welcome him home again." The dinner had just started, and everyone seemed to be in no hurry to express their various opinions or make things difficult for the future successor of the Qin family. Although before Qin Shing came, Bao Fan had already warned them not to speak carelessly today, or he would not let them off easily. For the sake of their common interests and future, it seemed that they did not intend to give up just like that. After a few glasses of wine, the atmosphere became more lively. The others all came forward to toast to Qin Shing or tried to get closer to him. Of course, Qin Shing did not refuse any of them. He could still handle this kind of situation. Chang Baji did not drink, and everyone knew his identity. After Bao Fan helped him out, no one came to find him again. After 3 rounds of wine, the real confrontation officially began. After Bao Fan's few trusted subordinates looked at each other for a while, someone finally stood up. His name was Su Jing, absolutely Bao Fan's trusted subordinate. Qin Shing had already met him before, and their relationship was not bad. He toasted to Qin Shing again, smiled, and said, "Young master, I have a question that I have always wanted to ask. Maybe it is also what everyone wants to ask, but it may be difficult for you to say it, so I will ask it on your behalf. If we have offended young master in any way, I hope young master will not be offended." Hearing Su Jing's words, Bao Fan stared at him unhappily and said, "Su Jing, sit down and eat." Qin Shing's expression changed slightly, but he still remained calm and said, "Uncle Bao, it's okay. Since Brother Su has a question, let him say it directly." The lively atmosphere just now instantly froze. Everyone stared at Su Jing, waiting for him to say the question that everyone had been guessing for a long time. Finally, Su Jing opened his mouth slowly and said, "Has Master Qin been arrested?" Chapter 858. Bao Fan was grateful to the Qin family because everything he had was given to him by the Qin family. Moreover, he knew more inside stories than many people. Therefore, even if the Qin family was in turmoil now, Bao Fan knew what he should do. However, Bao Fan's subordinates did not think so. They cared more about their own interests and future, and would not think too much about the Qin family. Even if Bao Fan was willing to be loyal to the Qin family, they might not be willing to do so. They hoped that Bao Fan could make the right choice to ensure that their interests would not be harmed. Therefore, when the time came, they might force Bao Fan to do something. However, the premise was that they had to figure out the situation of the Qin family. However, even if Bao Fan told them, they might not believe it. Now that Qin Shing was in Shanghai, they finally had a chance to ask him face to face. Su Jing threw out such a tricky question and directly questioned Qin Shing about the current big rumors. After Bao Fan heard it, he directly scolded him. Su Jing, how dare you? Where is this place? It's not your place to behave atrociously. Of course, Bao Fan was angry. Su Jing was his subordinate. If he questioned Qin Shing like this, it would make Qin Shing doubt whether it was his idea or not. It would easily destroy the trust he had built up with Qin Shing. Su Jing said disapprovingly, "Big brother, I just asked on behalf of my brothers. If you think I went too far, you can punish me in any way." You. Bao Fan pointed at Su Jing and felt somewhat helpless. At this time, Qin Shing opened his mouth and said, "Uncle Bao, what are you doing? Why are you angry? Brother Su is just asking casually. Didn't I say just now that you can ask any question? This should be the question that everyone is concerned about. It's okay, it's okay." "Young master, please give us an answer," Su Jing said persistently. Qin Shing did not care too much about it. At least they were in Shanghai today, and there was no problem on Bao Fan's side. Therefore, it did not matter if Su Jing asked this question. If this were in Shenzhen or the Northeast, and others asked this question, Qin Shing would think that today would be a hongmen banquet. Qin Shing stood up slowly, walked out of his seat, and walked to the tea artist behind him. He casually picked up a cup of superior oolong tea, turned around, looked at Su Jing and the others, and replied, "Brother Su, who told you this news?" Su Jing said calmly, "That's what people are saying. It's said that Master Qin has been arrested, and the whole Chang and family is in turmoil. As for our Qin family, except for Shanghai, people in the northeast, Shenzhen, and other places are getting restless. Young master, please tell us not to worry. Otherwise, why haven't we heard from Master Qin recently?" Qin Shing sipped his tea gently and said, "Given my current status, how powerful do you think the other party would be if he was caught? How powerful would he be if he wanted to hurt the Qin family and the Chang and family? Do I still need you to guess?" He reckoned that by now the newspapers, and the internet had already covered it. Taking a step back, if the old man was really arrested, do you think I would still be standing here talking to you? Right now, I should be in Beijing presiding over the overall situation. How can I care about you guys? After Qin Shing finished his words, everyone looked at each other and discussed in a low voice. It seemed to be true. What Qin Shing said was not unreasonable. They also wondered why Qin Shing came to Shanghai. How could he return to Shanghai at this time? However, Su Jing did not stop there. He pressed on and said, "Young master, you are right. But please give us the answer directly. We are all uneducated people and don't want to guess too much." Well, the truth is that the old man was not arrested. He was just assisting in the investigation. As you know, a big shot in the financial field has been in trouble recently. It is said that the old man has something to do with it, so he went to assist in the investigation. Moreover, this is not the first time that the old man has assisted in the investigation. It's just that this matter is a little tricky, so people spread the rumor. Besides, our Qin family has been in Siju City for so many years. How can something go wrong so easily? Qin Shing said firmly. He was just assisting in the investigation, not being arrested. However, when people heard the news, they inevitably felt shocked and doubtful. They were shocked because something had happened to Master Qin, and doubtful because they did not believe what Qin Shing said. Su Jing said thoughtfully, "Young master, can we believe what you said?" Bao Fan was a little annoyed and said, "Su Jing, I think you don't want to do it anymore." In fact, Qin Shing was very glad to meet them today. If not for this meeting, he would not know that the people below him had been so turbulent. This was still in Bao Fan's Shanghai, where he could suppress everything. But what about the situation in Shenzhen and the Northeast now? Qin Shing could not help but feel a little scared. It's up to you whether you believe it or not. But I want to ask, even if something really happened to the old man, "What do you want?" He had said all the polite words that should be said, and it was time for Qin Shing to show his tough side. He said sternly, "Don't you recognize me? Or do you want to set up your own family? Who gave you the courage?" Hearing this, everyone's face changed. Only then did they realize that they did not pay attention to Qin Shing and only regarded him as a young junior. In other words, although Qin Shing was the future heir of the Qin family, he was after all not Master Qin. "Young master, calm down," Bao Fan immediately replied. Su Jing and the others also said one after another, "Young master, we didn't mean that." Qin Shing slammed the table fiercely and said angrily, "Now the Qin family has not fallen yet, but you are already like this. If the Qin family really falls, when the tree falls, the monkeys will scatter, won't the tree fall? I think you people have not figured out the situation yet. The reason why the Qin family can come to this point today is not only because of luck. Even if the old man is gone, do you really think that you can have no scruples? I want to see who dares to stand out and rebel against the Qin family at that time. If there is really such a person, rest assured that I will respect you. But at the same time, I will also tell you why the Qin family is the Qin family." Qin Shing had been amiable just now, but now he was furious. They were two completely different concepts. At this time, everyone could feel how strong Qin Shing's aura was. He was not like the young people of the same age at all, but more like Master Qin's aura. The atmosphere instantly became awkward. No one dared to say anything, let alone question Qin Shing. At this time, the most suitable person to speak was naturally Bao Fan, and Bao Fan also spoke at the right time. He said with a smile, "Young master, rest assured. I can swear that even if something happens to Master Qin, I will advance and retreat together with the Qin family until death. If anyone dares to betray me, you don't need to do anything, I will directly kill them." Today, he was originally testing Qin Shing, but now things did not turn out as he wished. Su Jing replied in a hurry, "Young master, don't think too much. We are just worried about the Qin family. But as Big Brother said, no matter what happens, we will stand by the Qin family." "Yes, young master, don't worry." "Yes, young master, how could we do that?" "Young master, don't think too much." Everyone began to reply in order to show their loyalty in front of Qin Shing. As for whether Qin Shing was really angry today, they did not dare to speculate casually. Qin Shing suddenly laughed out loud and said, "Ha ha ha, sorry. I might have been a little harsh just now. Actually, I didn't mean that. Don't treat me like an outsider. How can I not believe you? Even if I don't believe you, can I not believe Uncle Bao? Let's not talk about this. I'm still very happy to see you today. Let's not talk about these trivial things later. Just drink and don't go home until we're drunk." "Don't go home until we're drunk," everyone replied. Therefore, under Bao Fan's mediation, the atmosphere was finally not so awkward. Although everyone had their own ulterior motives, at least it was lively on the surface. Everyone toasted and apologized to Qin Shing to ease the tension. The meeting ended like this. Lunch did not end until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The others left Yenshan Lake one after another. Bao Fan was not in a hurry to leave. He took Qin Shing to a place by the lake to drink tea to sober up. The two sat by the window thoughtfully. They were both a little drunk, but not to the extent of being unconscious. "How was it? What did you gain today?" Bao Fan asked with a smile. Qin Shing let out a long sigh and said, "Brother Bao, I have to thank you. If I didn't meet you, I really don't know how serious the situation would be." "Why do you say that?" Bao Fan asked with interest. Qin Shing replied slowly, "This is still Shanghai with you. The group of people below are like this, but what about Shenzhen and the Northeast? I can trust you, but can I trust Heyong in Shenzhen and Song Shixin in the Northeast? I haven't even seen them, how can I trust them?" Bao Fan took a sip of tea and said in a low voice, things may not be so difficult. It's all my subordinates' fault. If they offended you in any way today, don't take it to heart. I'll teach them a lesson later. That won't happen. Brother Bao won't teach them a lesson. I should be more grateful to them for speaking freely, Qin Sheng said truthfully. If he was really suppressed by Bao Fan, he would not know these things. Bao Fan frowned and pondered for a long time before saying, Young master, to be honest, it's better to be prepared for danger in times of peace. At least I know that He Yong in Shenzhen has a lot of ideas. He is in charge of some things in Guangdong and Hong Kong and Macau. If something happens to him, it will be a big blow to the Qin family. Well, you're right. Qin Sheng nodded silently. Bao Fan was very confused. Didn't Master Qin leave a backup plan? Or did Gongsun not prepare for it? I didn't care about these things before. I was only thinking about how to deal with the old man's affairs. Uncle Gongsun didn't let me get involved. However, after this time in Shanghai, I will definitely go back and have a talk with Uncle Gongsun. Otherwise, if something really goes wrong, it will be too late to regret it. Qin Sheng sighed sincerely. Although the Qin family's current strategy was to wait, they could still make arrangements in advance secretly. Bao Fan did not know why Gongsun did this. Maybe he had his considerations and scruples. However, the most important thing for the Qin family now was not these. The most important thing was Master Qin. Therefore Bao Fan replied, Young master, these are not important. The important thing is Master Qin's affairs. As long as Master Qin is fine, no one dares to make trouble. Therefore, young master, you don't have to worry too much. This time, Qin Sheng did not say anything. Who did not think so? But could the old man really be fine? Chapter 859. Everything will change eventually when the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. Qin Sheng finally understood the meaning of these two sentences. Wasn't the Qin family pushed by the crowd this time? Everything was like dominoes. When the first piece fell, if you couldn't stop the danger, then the second piece would fall, and so on. In the end, the whole army would be wiped out. Qin Sheng's eyes lit up. When the tree fell, the monkeys would scatter. People's hearts were often like this. When the water rose, people would rise. The Qin family was afraid that the fire at the city gate would bring disaster to the fish in the moat. Even if it did not bring disaster to the fish in the pond, the Qin family could not contain these great masters. Naturally, there would be a better choice, which was also inevitable. Therefore, now all the problems were exposed. As long as the matter of Qin Chang'an had a final result, the Qin family would be in two lines of life and death. Qin Sheng and Bao Fan left after chatting for half an hour. Bao Fan meant that they did not need to care about Shanghai and that he could just keep an eye on it. However, Qin Sheng had to worry about other things. He did not have the ability to do so. Qin Sheng did not have the ability to do so. Qin Sheng did not have the ability to do so. On the way back to the city, Qin Sheng took a nap. After all, he couldn't go to see Sister Qinyan so drunk. He would be more energetic after a nap. It just happened that the effect of alcohol was almost gone. Shui Qinyan was still waiting for Qin Sheng at the same place, which was Shangshan Ruoshui, which was under renovation. Now it was in full swing. It was estimated that it would take 3 months to reopen at the end of December, but Shui Qinyan was not in a hurry. She left everything to the team. Moreover, Mizan and Yu Fengji were watching. If there were any problems, she would communicate and deal with it in time. Occasionally, she would come to check. At least, she was much better than Qin Sheng. After the typhoon, the courtyard of Shangshan Ruoshui was a little messy. The staff was cleaning. Qin Sheng's cars were stopped when they came in, but they were naturally let go after he reported his identity. It was particularly cool today. Shui Qinyan, Yu Fengji and Liu Yuan were waiting for them at the top of the building. Dinner had already been prepared, and there was no lack of wine. Qin Sheng came up and saw the wine. Before Qin Sheng said hello, Yu Fengji said, Oh, you are still sneaking back to Shanghai. If Sister Qinyan didn't tell us, we really didn't know. Since when did you become so sarcastic? Qin Xing asked as he looked at the crowd. Yu Fengji was still so sexy and charming, but her eyes were full of hidden bitterness, like a resentful woman who had been married for many years. Liu Yuan, on the other hand, was dressed like a contractor, with dust all over his body. He was responsible for monitoring the progress of the renovation every day, and had just helped them with some work. As for Xue Qinyan, she was still the same Xue Qinyan. Nothing had changed. Ms. Chong Sam was always so noble and charming. Especially at this moment, she was wearing a black dress. Her legs were slightly crossed, revealing a pair of slender and beautiful legs. She was very elegant as she drank red wine, just like a master's artistic painting. Yu Fengji insisted, "Did I say anything wrong?" Qin Xing did not dare to continue to be entangled with Yu Fengji. He knew that this woman would not let him off easily. At this time, he had already walked in front of everyone and greeted Xue Qinyan in a low voice. "Sister, you look a little tired." Xue Qinyan put down the glass of red wine, looked at Qin Xing gently and said, "It's like this every time I come back to Hangzhou. I can't avoid all kinds of social activities. It's really exhausting." Qin Xing casually sat next to Xue Qinyan. Liu Yuan was very polite and greeted Qin Xing. Qin Xing chatted with him for a while. Yu Fengji was still sulking. Qin Xing had to admit defeat and comfort her for a while. Then Yu Fengji calmed down. He did not know how to deal with the relationship with Yu Fengji so far. He could only say that he would let nature take its course. He did not want to be too deliberate with Yu Fengji. Maybe a lot of things would be so indifferent slowly. Yu Fengji was ready to pour wine for Qin Xing. Qin Xing politely refused. "I don't drink. I drank too much white wine at noon. I will just chat with you for a while." Because Yu Fengji and Liu Yuan were still there, Qin Xing and Xue Qinyan did not talk about anything about the Qin family. They just talked about Shangshan Ruoshui. Mizan was not here because she was on a business trip. So Liu Yuan and Yu Fengji reported the current situation of Shangshan Ruoshui. For example, the shareholders had transferred all the funds to the account of Shangshan Ruoshui. The renovation progress was still smooth. Next, they would re-recruit and train the staff of each department. Everything was going according to plan. After listening to them, Qin Xing was very positive about their work. He said that he might not have the energy to take care of Shangshan Ruoshui recently, so he left it all to them. He trusted the whole team. In fact, there were some words that Qin Xing did not say. That was, not only recently, he might not have time to take care of Shangshan Ruoshui in the future. When the Qin family was in trouble, there were too many things for him to worry about. He had long been unable to take care of Shangshan Ruoshui. After talking about these things, Liu Yuan and Yu Fengji left, deliberately leaving time for Xue Qinyan and Qin Xing. Naturally, they knew that they still had something to talk about. After waiting for them to leave, Xue Qinyan directly asked, "What's wrong? Did you run to Shanghai to take refuge?" "No, I just want to relax or to stay away from trouble." Qin Xing shook his head and smiled bitterly. Xue Qinyan took a sip of red wine to calm down and said, "Stay away from trouble? Can you stay away from trouble? Tell me, what's the situation now? I will help you analyze it." Xue Qinyan knew some inside story. When Qin Xing told her, she intentionally inquired about it from her friend. She thought that the situation was not so serious. Later she knew that this time was different. Because something really happened, Master Qin had been taken away, and now he was in a state of uncontactable. Was it not serious? "The building is about to collapse." Qin Xing sighed. Xue Qinyan frowned and said, "Even if Master Qin was taken away, it should not be so serious. Maybe you think too much. Maybe it is a false alarm?" "We also hope so, but is it possible? From the feedback from all sides, this time it is really a volcanic eruption. Qin Sheng said truthfully. Xue Qinyan asked in a deep voice, "So, after Master Qin was taken away, have you seen him so far?" "No, I can't get any news at all. Everyone is trying to avoid it. No one is willing to help the Qin family. Can you imagine how much resistance there is behind it?" Qin Sheng said helplessly. He did not lament that a friend in need would show his true feelings or that the tea would cool after the person left, because this was not an ordinary thing. Whoever was involved might be affected. No matter how good the relationship was, no one was willing to risk their lives to help the Qin family. More people like Master Lu and the others would stab the Qin family in the back. Xue Qingyan's expression gradually became serious and she said, "Then what are you going to do?" "Wait," Qin Sheng replied very simply. Xue Qingyan was very surprised and said, "Just wait? No action at all? Aren't you afraid that the situation will become more and more serious and there will be no room for maneuver?" When everyone heard the Qin family's choice, they would be shocked. According to most situations and cases, at this time, they should spend all their money, try to get information through their connections, and then use their influence to solve the problem. No matter what price they had to pay, it would be fine as long as they got through safely. However, this time the Qin family could not do it. Qin Sheng sighed and said, "This is the Zhu family's suggestion. Sister, do you have any better ideas?" Xue Qinyan had been speculating whether the Zhu family would help the Qin family. Although from the current information, it seemed that the Zhu family did not intend to get involved, and they did not take any direct action, Xue Qinyan also thought that it was not the right time yet and the Zhu family was not ready to take action. However, there was also a possibility that the Zhu family would not interfere with the Qin family's affairs, because the Zhu family's future was more important than anything else. Many people could see clearly that the Zhu family was planning that after Zhu Weiguo retired, Zhu Changshun could smoothly take over. This was the change of power in the Zhu family, to ensure that the younger generation of the Zhu family could smoothly enter the core circle in the next 10 or 20 years. However, when Qin Sheng said that this was the Zhu family's suggestion, Xue Qinyan had to think more. It seemed that the Zhu family did not give up on the Qin family, and it was very likely that they would take action later. The Zhu family's suggestion? I don't understand. Xue Qinyan was very confused. This was a little unexpected for her. She did not know what the Zhu family was thinking, at least she could not understand it. Not to mention Xue Qinyan, even Qin Sheng was a little confused, not to mention Zhao Anji and the others. However, Qin Sheng believed that his uncle and uncle could see further, so he said, "Maybe we will understand it if we wait." Since Qin Sheng did not drink, Xue Qinyan did not stay in Shangshan Ruoshui for too long. After saying goodbye, they left Shangshan Ruoshui, but they did not rush to leave. Instead, they walked side by side under the parasol tree outside, and the others followed them. "So you took the time to go back to Shanghai?" Xue Qinyan said casually. Qin Sheng nodded and replied, "Sort of. I just solved all the problems left in Shanghai. Otherwise, when Beijing is really busy, I am afraid that there will be no such leisure time. At that time, even if I come back, I am afraid that I will come and go in a hurry." Xue Qinyan encouraged Qin Sheng. "No matter what, I believe everything will get better. Maybe things will not be so bad." Qin Sheng was finally willing to say something. He said, "Maybe for the Qin family or the Chang'an group, it is the best choice to break down and then build up. This is not only the problem of the Qin family and the Chang'an group, but also the problem that these barbaric interest groups have to face in the 30 years of reform and opening up. So the Qin family and the Chang'an group may not be the end, but just the beginning." Xue Qinyan was shocked when she heard this. She did not expect Qin Sheng to see so far and seemed to be very open-minded. At least she would not be like this. Qin Sheng did not speak anymore. During this time, he always thought of what the old professor said at the Qinghua Lake. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that many problems gradually became clear. The old professor said that because of the general trend, no one could be a mantis trying to stop a chariot, and advancing and retreating with the country was the wisest choice. Everything was finally going to change. There was no news from Beijing, so Qin Shing continued to wait in Shanghai. 2 days passed unconsciously. After Xia Ding came back from Hangzhou, he directly ran to Qin Shing. Qin Shing and Lin Su invited him and his girlfriend to dinner that night. On the way back, Xia Ding mentioned the class reunion that he mentioned last time and asked Qin Shing if he was interested. Qin Shing happened to be free, so he casually agreed. Chapter 860. The so-called reunion, the so-called class reunion, was not a class reunion. Back then, Qin Shing was not very close to his classmates. In the beginning, they still had some contact after graduation. However, after he disappeared for 2 years, they no longer had any contact with each other. This reunion was a reunion of classmates of the same grade back then. At that time, several influential classmates of the same grade formed it. The members were all outstanding or influential classmates of the same grade. Of course, there was no lack of students with considerable resources, such as the children of officials or rich families. Otherwise, how could a slacker like Xia Ding join? However, wasn't it the same in any school's reunion? No wonder everyone said that only those who were doing well could have a reunion, and those who were not doing well were just classmates. After all, in such a big environment in the country, the concept of classmates carried a lot of weight. In the future, no matter what you did, being a classmate or a classmate from the same school or the same hometown would bring you some help. It was the same for this reunion, which was inevitably tacky. Nowadays, most of the people in it were doing well. The new students had to go through the so-called organization's examination. They had certain standards and could only join after passing the examination. It had to be said that these people had a certain amount of resources. Qin Shing was not a stranger to the reunion. For example, when he attended the Tsinghua University seminar last time, not to mention that there was a reunion in his class, everyone seemed to be quite close on normal days. It was just that Qin Shing was not very active. Even so, he could not stop the enthusiasm of his classmate. Many people took the initiative to contact him, or invited him to play together, and so on. During the graduation ceremony, Qin Shing's image was too high profile. Only then did everyone realize that the most low-key character was actually the most hidden big boss. Not only that, later, there were professors or classmates who recommended Qin Shing to join various famous alumni associations or reunion in Tsinghua University. However, Qin Shing politely rejected them. He was not willing to contact these unfamiliar strangers. With his current identity, wouldn't he have to deal with all kinds of trivial matters? Therefore, Qin Shing had nothing to do. Otherwise, he would not attend this kind of reunion. With his current strength, he did not need to attend the so-called reunion at all. The main reason was that Xia Ding also said that there would be a few classmates who were good friends with him in the past. Qin Shing was a little interested. After all, his university memories were still very good. The process of the reunion was actually very simple. There were not too many complicated procedures. It was just to gather at Fudan University at noon. At that time, there would be a related ceremony. It was said that some leaders and teachers of Fudan University would also attend. In the afternoon, it would be a simple tea party to chat and chat. Everyone could also take the time to visit their teachers in the past and so on. In the evening, it would be a more lively dinner party. They would drink and chat to get closer to each other. After dinner, they would be free to do whatever they wanted. Some classmates who did not have enough fun or regretted not meeting each other earlier could continue to leave. Of course, there was another situation, which depended on each person's ability. It would depend on each person's ability. Otherwise, everyone would say that a reunion was a couple. This time, Qin Sheng was still relatively low-key. He did not bring too many people with him, only Chang Baji. Then, he gave the others a day off to let them rest. Otherwise, with such a big scene, which of the classmates were all extremely smart, there would be a lot of trouble when the time came. Therefore, Chang Baji was his and Xia Ding's driver today. Wherever they went, Chang Baji naturally followed. Xia Ding, who was never short of money and loved to squander, recently bought a car again. He said that it was a gift for his girlfriend, Qin Qin. But why did he buy a new Lamborghini SUV? It was no wonder that after he bought the car, he was severely scolded by his parents. Why did he say that he bought a car for himself? Why did he say that it was a gift for Qin Qin? I don't believe that Qin Qin would like this kind of car. In the end, Xia Ding pestered them endlessly and Qin Qin helped him to get through this hurdle. Actually, Xia Ding naturally did not lack this bit of money. It was just that he did not want to spend it himself if he could. He had even done this business with his parents. It was not an ordinary kind of treacherous person. When they arrived at Fudan University, it seemed that it was still a little early. They were not in a hurry to go to the registration classroom. Qin Sheng had not returned to Fudan University since graduation. The few times he had gone there, he only passed by and did not go in. Hence, Qin Sheng and Xia Ding wanted to take a good look around again. They wanted to go to those familiar places and experience their past memories. It was a good thing to do. It was a pity that it was the summer vacation now. There was still half a month before the new school started. Otherwise, if they were in the mood, they could squat under the teaching building of the School of Foreign Languages and look at the beautiful little girls. Although it was the summer vacation now, there were still quite a number of students on campus. It was just that there were not as many as usual. Many students would stay in Shanghai during the summer vacation to work or do internship. After all, there were more opportunities in Shanghai. For those students in remote and poor areas or from families, the summer vacation could allow them to earn some tuition fees or living expenses for the next semester. Not everyone's family was like Xia Ding and Qin Sheng's. The two of them talked and laughed as they walked through many places. The familiar dormitory building, the familiar teaching building and classroom, the familiar canteen and restaurant, the familiar playground, the familiar road, and everything was familiar. However, there were no familiar people, only familiar memories. In the end, Qin Sheng found that there was a familiar figure in all these familiar places. That was Su Qin. Su Qin was destined to be a memory that he could not forget and escape from. She would always stay in the depths of his heart. Hence, Qin Sheng felt a little sad at this moment. Especially when he thought of what Hao Lei had said a few days ago. Su Qin had been hesitating whether to make that call or not. He had already made up his mind not to disturb Su Qin's life anymore. But was it the best choice for Su Qin to not disturb her? At that time, he also heard that Su Qin was ready to let go of him. But could she really let go of such an unforgettable person and thing just by saying it? Obviously not. Sometimes, Qin Sheng felt that he seemed to be a bit too cruel to Su Qin. Back then, she did not do anything wrong. Everything was his own choice. Moreover, Su Qin had looked for him for so long and even waited for him for so long. She really did not let him down. But in the end, he just missed Su Qin. At that time, maybe his male chauvinism was for Su Qin's good, because his life was destined to be wandering from place to place. He did not want Su Qin to suffer with him, so he could only be so cruel. But now, he did not need to think about these trivial things. Did he want to see Su Qin suffer? Did he really have the heart to do that? Su Qin was the first love who had accompanied him through his youth. From the 3 years of high school to the 4 years of college, Su Qin had accompanied him in all his campus life. It was Su Qin who gave him the love he wanted the most when he was in school. It was Su Qin who had accompanied him through every spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Could he really forget those beautiful and innocent times and those bits and pieces of the past? Qin Shing felt some inexplicable heartache, but he already had Lin Su now. But this did not seem to be a reason, because he still had Qing. It seemed to be very unfair to Su Qin. Qin Shing could not help but think of a possibility. If it was almost time. Xia Ding said that the students over there had already made a call. So Qin Shing and Xia Ding went to the classroom used for reception. Before they arrived at the door of the classroom, they already saw a lot of people at the door. It looked a little lively. There were a lot of luxury cars parked on the roadside under the teaching building. They must be the cars of the students who participated in this class reunion. After all, many people in this class reunion were of high social status. According to Xia Ding, there were more than 100 members in this class reunion, all of whom were relatively good at their level. This time, there were estimated to be about 40 to 50 people who could come. It could be said that everyone gave them face. The rest were either abroad or in other places, or they could not come because they were too busy with work. So everyone was very interested. Xia Ding said that everyone had a small gathering before. This time, they had graduated for 5 years, so there was a relatively large gathering. Qin Shing could not help but feel a little emotional. Unknowingly, it had been 5 years since they graduated. With so many classmates, not everyone knew each other. Maybe they had at most seen each other in the past. Now that it had been 5 years since they graduated, they had almost forgotten each other. But with this class reunion, they would be familiar with each other again in the future. Xia Ding and Qin Shing had arrived at the door of the lecture hall. At the door, there were students and staff who were in charge of reception and registration. The staff were part-time students of Fudan University. In fact, with the strength of this class reunion, it could be held in any 5-star hotel in Shanghai. But they felt that the taste would be different. Maybe many students would reject it. So they directly held it on the campus of Fudan University, taking the nostalgic route. In fact, Qin Shing felt that the basic purpose was basically the same. It was just that, if it was held in Fudan University, it would be more pleasing. Because many students might really want to go back to the campus to have a look. There were students in front of them, so Qin Shing and Xia Ding were not in a hurry. Xia Ding had always been popular, and he often had activities in Shanghai, so he knew many students. Just now, several people had already greeted him, including beautiful students. Poor Qin Shing did not have any sense of existence. At most, they just smiled at him. "Boss, did you see that? Just now, that is the campus bell of the School of Foreign Languages. She was quite interested in me in the past. Unfortunately, I was pursuing someone from the School of Management, so I missed a fate." Xia Ding stared at a female student who had already entered and sighed with emotion. Qin Shing said impatiently, "Boy, you also harmed a lot of our classmates in Fudan University, as well as senior and junior sisters. Let me count for you, how many girlfriends have you had in the whole university? I think there are 8. That is 1 in a semester. Are you not afraid of retribution? Who doesn't have a young and frivolous heart?" Xia Ding sighed. Qin Shing did not bother to pay attention to this guy. Xia Ding also stopped talking nonsense. Only then did the two of them walk over to sign in. Xia Ding found the name to sign in smoothly, but Qin Shing did not join this student association, so naturally, his name was not on it. Then, the student in charge of signing in and the staff did not allow Qin Shing to enter, which was a little embarrassing. Actually, Xia Ding did not think much about this, because he did not pay much attention to this student association at all. He felt that they were all classmates of the same level in Fudan University. How could there be so many rules in a broken student association? However, he was also too lazy to argue with the student in charge of signing in. He was going to call one of the people in charge of the student association, who was also a classmate he and Qin Shing were familiar with back then. At this moment, a man's voice suddenly came from behind. "Yo, isn't this young Master Xia?" Do you want to bring in just anyone? Chapter 861. Wasn't it just a classmate gathering of the same level? It was not the core class gathering of the entire Fudan Alumni Association. Naturally, Xia Ding didn't take it too seriously. He only thought that it was a gathering between classmates and friends. It should be no problem to bring Qin Xing along. Who knew that it was so strict here? It was like some high-level entrepreneur club and so on. However, Xia Ding did not think much about it. This also showed that the students who organized the activity were more serious and responsible. Rules were rules. If anyone could participate, wouldn't it be a mess? Qin Xing also thought so. He persuaded Xia Ding with a few words. Therefore, Xia Ding called his friend whom he was familiar with and asked him to come out and talk to him. Xia Ding couldn't hold back his anger anymore. He was really unlucky to meet this guy today. When they were in school, they didn't get along with each other and had conflict. It had been 5 years since they graduated, but this guy was still the same. Xia Ding didn't know when this guy joined this class reunion. Qin Xing and Xia Ding didn't get along well with each other at school. They had some conflicts. 5 years after graduation, this guy was still the same. Xia Ding didn't know when this guy joined this class reunion. He had never heard of it. But after all, it was a class gathering, and they were all old classmates. This was not the time when they were in school. Otherwise, Xia Ding would have hit him directly. They were all adults, and he could not be so impulsive. So he was not flustered and exasperated. After restraining his emotions, he looked up and down at this old acquaintance and replied, "Oh, it's you, Hai. I was wondering who could spit out ivory from a dog's mouth. It turns out it's you. When did you sneak into the class gathering? It seems that you are doing well." Qin Xing had already turned around and quietly looked at this old classmate who had been beaten by him in the past. It seemed that he was doing well indeed. He was dressed very brightly, and all his clothes were from big brands. His hair was combed back, and his hairline almost reached the back of his head. The most important thing was that he brought a female companion. Her temperament and appearance were not bad. No wonder he was so arrogant. However, this beauty glanced at Qin Xing and Xia Ding and lost interest. She lowered her head and continued to play with her mobile phone. She did not mean to greet them. It was unknown whether it was because she was a rich and arrogant beauty, or because she felt that the relationship between them was not good. She paid more attention to Xia Ding. Maybe Xia Ding liked to show off his wealth, and Qin Xing, who was low-key, was naturally ignored. Yu Hai narrowed his eyes and said unhappily, "Xia Ding, it's been so many years, but you're still so arrogant. I really don't know how you survived until now. I heard that you're still living off your parents. That's all you've got. I don't know why you were allowed to join the class reunion. That's because my old man is more powerful than your old man. If you want to live off your old man, you have to have the ability to do so. I'm still wondering how you managed to sneak into the class reunion. Don't tell me you've become a live-in son-in-law?" Xia Ding had always been unforgiving with his words. He purposely glanced at the cold and arrogant beauty beside him and teased. He didn't know why this woman fell for Yu Hai. The beauty also heard Xia Ding's words. She subconsciously raised her head and glared at Xia Ding. "What did you say?" Yu Hai was also a little annoyed. No man would let others bully his woman. Xia Ding's words were already a naked provocation. However, Yu Hai didn't dare to make a scene in this class reunion. He also didn't dare to stand up for his girlfriend. He could only shout, "What did you say?" Xia Ding was about to reply when Qin Xing pulled him back. This was because this place had become the focus of everyone. Many students who came to participate in the class reunion were standing and watching. Of course, Qin Xing didn't want to become a joke. He could only pull Xia Ding back. Then, he looked at Yu Hai and said, "Yu Hai, long time no see." Yu Hai had long recognized Qin Xing. However, because of the grudges in the past, He didn't want to take the initiative to greet Qin Sheng. That resentment was still suppressed in his heart. He sneered and said, "Oh, I was wondering who Xia Ding brought here. So it's you, Qin Sheng. How did you end up like this? You even want to join the class reunion. Do you need me to inform President Chao?" "There's no need for that. Who asked me to not be qualified?" Qin Sheng said lightly. There was no need for him to fight with someone like Yu Hai. If he did that, it would seem that he was relatively stingy. It was just a class reunion. It didn't matter if he didn't attend. He was originally here to join in the fun. Yu Hai didn't expect Qin Sheng to advance by taking a step back. He knew that Qin Sheng had been in the limelight many times in the past. He was considered an influential figure in their class. Therefore, Yu Hai was very jealous of Qin Sheng. At this time, the old classmate that Xia Ding had called came out. Seeing that there were many people gathered here, he quickly ran over and asked, "What's wrong? What's going on?" Xia Ding saw the old acquaintance and scolded angrily, "I say, old son, why did you come out so late? If you didn't come out soon, I would be disgusted to death by some flies. A stupid class reunion with so many rules. Don't call me in the future." The simple and honest man called Old Son seemed to be a person who knew his place. When he heard Xia Ding's words, he also saw Yu Hai, who was not far away from him. It seemed that he thought of what had happened in the past and understood what was going on. He just nodded and smiled at Yu Hai. Then he asked Xia Ding, "You said that Qin Sheng is also here. Where is he?" Xia Ding pointed at Qin Sheng, who was behind Old Son, and said, "Isn't he here? Are you blind?" Old Son and Qin Sheng's dormitory were originally close, so he was very familiar with Qin Sheng. He also held a key position in the student union and often abused his power for personal gain. Therefore, he had been in contact with Xia Ding all these years. Back then, when Xia Ding joined this class reunion, he was also invited by Old Sunday. It was just that Qin Sheng disappeared for a long time, so they didn't contact each other anymore. However, their relationship in the past was still there. After seeing Xia Ding, Old Sun had mixed feelings. He directly put his arm around Qin Sheng's shoulder and said with a sigh, "Let's not talk about anything else. Let's go in first." With Old Sun, the core figure of the class reunion, Qin Sheng naturally entered smoothly. When he entered this big classroom, he found that there were already many classmates here. Some of them had met in the past, but they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Some of them just didn't come out, and some of them only had a vague impression of him. However, most of them were relatively unfamiliar to him. After all, there were so many students at the same level as him, and he could recognize all of them. However, Qin Sheng and Xia Ding were both influential figures in the past. Although they didn't know others, it didn't mean that others didn't know them. Therefore, after they entered the classroom, many classmates began to talk about them. It seemed that they didn't expect to see them here. After Old Sun led Qin Sheng and Xia Ding into the classroom, Yu Hai still stayed in the same place. His eyes were filled with uncertainty, and no one knew what he was thinking. At this time, his girlfriend sneered at him and said, "Why are you so useless? Are you still the same you in the past? What can I do with you? You really disappoint me." Yu Hai didn't say anything. At this time, a man walked over from behind, patted Yu Hai's shoulder lightly and said, "Yu Hai, what's wrong? Are you still angry? A man's dignity is not earned in this way." After Yu Hai turned around and saw that it was that man, he quickly smiled apologetically and said, "Chairman Chao, you are here." The man, who was called Chairman Chao by Yu Hai, had witnessed the whole process just now. He was already used to it, who had not offended a few people when they were students, who had not been bullied or bullied. Some classmates would more or less have some conflicts, let alone these privileged people. Therefore, it was normal for there to be conflicts between classmates. It was just that most of them didn't have any interactions after graduation, and these conflicts would completely disappear and become memories. As for the old classmates who had come together because of this class reunion, some of them had taken the initiative to reconcile, some of them had hidden from each other, and some of them had never contacted each other. As for those who couldn't communicate with each other, they didn't bother to deal with them. Chairman Chow could totally persuade Yu Hai and Qin Sheng to reconcile, but it seemed that he didn't mean to do so. Why? Because he didn't have a good impression of Qin Sheng back then. Who asked him to pursue Su Qin back then? But Su Qin was Qin Sheng's girlfriend. In the end, he could only regret it for the rest of his life. Therefore, he had a lot of opinions about Qin Sheng. Later, Qin Sheng and Su Qin broke up. Qin Sheng went missing while Su Qin stayed in Shanghai. Qin Sheng, who also stayed in Shanghai, still pursued Su Qin relentlessly. Unfortunately, Su Qin rejected him every time he confessed to her. It was not until he heard from other classmates that Su Qin had been waiting for Qin Sheng that he gave up completely. What he didn't understand was, what was so good about Qin Sheng that Su Qin was so infatuated with him? Regardless of family background or ability, he felt that Qin Sheng was not worth mentioning at all. Moreover, he was the vice president of the Student Union of Fudan University. With such a background, everyone knew that he had a bright future. However, Su Qin just didn't like him. Until now, he still couldn't understand why. The more he couldn't understand this matter, the more he hated Qin Sheng. Compared with Yu Hai, who was so straightforward, he knew how to hide it. Moreover, he was the vice president of the Student Union. He didn't want this matter to affect his future. Later, he also inquired about the news about Su Qin. He heard that Su Qin had left Shanghai and returned to Xi'an. This made him a little emotional. However, as time went by and he got busy with his work, he didn't think about these things anymore. However, he didn't expect that he would meet his former rival in love, Qin Sheng, again at this class reunion today. It was really a narrow road for enemies. Now, when he faced Qin Sheng again, he was naturally full of confidence. He was a junior who was placed high hopes on by his family. Now he was already at the deputy division level. He was less than 30 years old. Everyone could imagine how far he could go in the future. Therefore, most of the people in the class reunion fawned on him. As for Qin Sheng, he didn't seem to be doing well. He was still so ordinary. Such a rival in love did not deserve to be his opponent at all. Therefore, for the sake of the evil thoughts in his heart, he had already thought about how to humiliate Qin Sheng. Who asked Qin Sheng to have Su Qin, while he didn't have such a chance? Therefore, this President Chow led Yu Hai into the lecture hall, talking and laughing. Naturally, he sat in the front seat, while Yu Hai took his girlfriend to the back. This scene was coincidentally seen by Xia Ding. After all, Xia Ding always stared at the door to see if there were any beauties appearing. Therefore, when he saw President Chow, Xia Ding pointed at Qin Sheng and said, "Boss, is that Chow Kefin in front? The vice president of the student union who used to chase after Su Qin? I didn't expect him to be here today." Qin Sheng naturally recognized Chow Kefin. He said casually and didn't think much about it. Xia Ding deliberately said half-jokingly, "I heard that this vice president is doing well now. Boss, you have to be careful." Qin Sheng shook his head and smiled bitterly. It had been 4 or 5 years since the stories of these old friends. He had long forgotten about them. However, if they took the initiative to provoke him, they could only blame their bad luck. Chapter 862. How could it be simple? Of course, Xia Ding was joking. With Qin Sheng's current identity, none of these so-called old classmates could be his match. If anyone dared to provoke him, they would be courting death. No matter how good they were, where could they go? No matter if they were in politics, business, or self-made businesses, they were nothing in front of Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng was not so stingy. It had been 4 or 5 years since he graduated. What happened in the past was already in the past. Sometimes when he thought about it, he felt that it was quite childish. But everyone was like that when they were young. People always had to experience a lot of things before they could gradually grow up. If every young man was so mature, the world would be too boring. Maybe it was because they had just entered the lecture hall. Some students were not used to the atmosphere here. Everyone seemed to be a little restrained and only talked to their regular or familiar friends. Xia Ding was a social butterfly in the student union. He often met up with his old classmates in Shanghai, so he knew a lot of students. At this moment, he was very busy. He was good at this kind of occasion, so he was like a fish in water. Qin Sheng sat there alone and chatted with Lao Sun for a while. Lao Sun asked him what he had been doing in the past few years, and why there was no news about him at all. Qin Sheng just casually explained it to him. Anyway, these stories were just hearsay to others. How many people could understand the joys and sorrows of life in the story? So it didn't matter if it was true or not. But after chatting with him, Qin Sheng also knew that old Sun was doing quite well nowadays. After he graduated, he went to work in the municipal committee of the Communist Youth League. Under the recommendation of his tutor, he was appreciated by a noble person. Now he was already a small cadre. No wonder he had a lot of prestige in the class reunion and became one of the organizers of this reunion. As one of the organizers of this class reunion, Old Sun naturally had a lot of things to do. After chatting with Qin Sheng for a while, he left. Qin Sheng sat there alone and looked at the students coming and going. Some of the students who took the initiative to greet him, Qin Sheng would not reject them. He would smile and greet them politely. After all, they had crossed paths in the past. Although 5 years had passed since graduation, the memories and feelings of the past were still there. However, Qin Sheng still felt a little emotional. Although the people today had not changed much from what they had been in the past, many things had actually changed. For example, they were no longer arrogant and fearless students in the past. They had become ordinary people who had to lower their heads in the face of reality and life. In the past, they would get close to whoever they liked. Now, they would get close to whoever was doing well. This was the change. Although he felt emotional and disappointed, Qin Sheng could understand it. There were always a lot of helplessness in life. Who didn't want to live a pure and free life? But how many people could really live like that? In the end, it still became a reality. Therefore, sitting here at this moment, everything in the lecture hall could be seen clearly. For example, whoever was doing well would naturally have more classmates around him. Whoever was doing well would be the center of the circle. It was similar to the game rules in the outside world. Even if 2 students were chatting alone, it could be seen who was doing better than the other. There were differences in tone, manner, and so on. Therefore, Qin Sheng, an old classmate who had disappeared for several years, became invisible. Except for the classmates who were familiar with him or knew him in the past, no one paid attention to him anymore. Even the classmates who were familiar with him instantly lost interest in chatting with him after hearing that he was now unemployed. The reality was so cruel that people felt a little helpless. Probably no one would have thought that the invisible Qin Sheng was the one who was doing the best here. Originally, Xia Ding wanted to introduce Qin Sheng to everyone. However, Qin Sheng was not interested and asked him not to care about him. Naturally, Xia Ding would not stand on ceremony with Qin Sheng. Not long after he left Qin Sheng behind, he became acquainted with various people. Qin Sheng sat for a while and just sent away his former friends who lived in the same dormitory. A beautiful woman who used to be pure and cute but was now full of charm walked over and sat next to Qin Sheng naturally. She opened her mouth and said softly, "Do you still remember me?" After smelling the faint Chanel perfume, Qin Sheng subconsciously looked to the side. After his eyes stayed for a few seconds, he recognized this beautiful young woman and said in a low voice, "I didn't expect you to come too. TSK, you still remember me. I didn't chase you for so long in vain." The beautiful woman who used to be a girl and was now a young woman reached out her hand naturally and said, "Long time no see, Qin Sheng." The beautiful woman with the strong smell of a young woman was called Liang Shuang. She used to be a big beauty in the school of foreign languages. Back then, she took the initiative to chase Qin Sheng and persisted for 2 years. She only gave up when she was sure that there was no chance. It was said that she met a son of an official who was chasing her. After that, there was no news of Qin Sheng. Liang Shuang's conditions were not bad. Not to mention her natural appearance, she dared to be so confident in front of Su Qin. If she did not have some strength, she would be a laughingstock. Secondly, her family conditions were not bad. It was said that she was born in a diplomatic family. Her grandfather, maternal grandfather, and parents were all diplomats. This made her naturally arrogant and contemptuous of most of her pursuers. Why did she like Qin Sheng? There was naturally a story behind it. Unfortunately, they were not fated to be together and missed each other. Ever since Liang Shuang had a boyfriend, she and Qin Sheng did not have much contact. This time, she was instigated to come to the class reunion. It was because she happened to be on a business trip in Shanghai these few days. Plus, in this society, it was not a bad thing to hang out with classmates. Moreover, she was born in a diplomatic family, so she did not reject this kind of occasion. However, Liang Shuang did not expect to see Qin Sheng here. She confirmed it was Qin Sheng after confirming again and again. Compared to Qin Sheng in the past, the current Qin Sheng seemed to be more calm, like a middle-aged uncle who had experienced the vicissitudes of life. Liang Shuang then walked over and sat next to Qin Sheng. She did not greet him in a conventional way. She directly asked Qin Sheng if he knew her. Qin Sheng's answer was also very interesting. Liang Shuang used to be a famous big beauty when she was in the outer courtyard of Fudan University. She was especially popular. Now that she had entered the society, it was still the same. Therefore, when Liang Shuang sat next to Qin Sheng, some classmates had already begun to point at her. After all, Liang Shuang was so famous. Whether it was her family background or the power of her current in-laws, they were not simple at all. How could Qin Sheng refuse a beauty who took the initiative to reach out her hand? However, after shaking hands, Liang Shuang did not seem to have any intention of letting go. She chuckled and said, "Although we haven't seen each other for 5 or 6 years, why do I find that you as a man have become more attractive? It seems that I shouldn't have given up on you back then." Qin Sheng felt a little helpless. Liang Shuang back then was more straightforward. Now, Liang Shuang was even more so. She was a woman who really knew how to use her own advantages to maximize her benefit. She was unworldly but shrewd. She was a very smart woman. Therefore, Qin Sheng felt that she was not suitable for him. When she saw Qin Sheng again, Liang Shuang did not bear a grudge because she had been rejected by Qin Sheng back then. She also did not have the mentality of, "You were indifferent to me in the past, but now I am unworthy of you." She was even more unwilling to guess what Qin Sheng's current identity was and how he was doing. These were all the ways she treated other classmates. When facing Qin Sheng, she only had one thing, that was, Qin Sheng was the boy she had liked back then. At least, after observing for a long time, she found that Qin Sheng was still the same Qin Sheng back then. Although he had experienced the vicissitudes of life and was calm, what had not changed was still his character, unlike most of the other so-called classmates present, who had changed so much that they might not even be able to recognize themselves. "I heard that you are also quite happy now, so you made the right choice back then," Qin Sheng had to reply politely. Liang Shuang's eyes were a little sad as she said, "Only I know whether I am happy or not. I heard that you and Su Qin broke up later, so I quite regret giving up on you back then. Maybe it is you who is by my side now, isn't it? Liang Shuang, we are not the same kind of people. Qin Shing shook his head and smiled bitterly. Liang Shuang was a little confused. Why not? Am I really not as good as Su Qin? It has nothing to do with these things, Qin Shing said in a low voice. Liang Shuang did not want to talk about these things. She also heard about Qin Shing and Su Qin breaking up later. She did not expect that the two people who used to love each other so deeply actually broke up. This made Liang Shuang very shocked. After all, no matter if it was Su Qin or Qin Shing, they had pursued each other a lot. However, they had gone through 4 years of college and never had any emotional conflict. Why did they break up just after college? This made a lot of people puzzled. You really broke up with Su Qin? Liang Shuang changed the topic. Qin Shing nodded silently and said yes. Liang Shuang seemed to be a little doubtful and continued to ask, No more contact? We saw each other before, but now we have no contact, Qin Shing answered truthfully. Liang Shuang replied very disappointedly, That is really a bit of a pity. Qin Shing did not say anything more. He knew that there would definitely be a lot of students asking about this at the class reunion. After all, he and Su Qin were a celestial couple in many people's eyes at that time. However, these things that happened later, no one had expected it. Liang Shuang no longer asked about love affairs. She asked again, Let's talk about you. I haven't heard from you for 5 or 6 years. I don't know what you have been doing all these years. I also don't know where you are working now. Why didn't I know that you are coming to attend the class reunion? Liang Shuang's series of questions made Qin Shing a little bit speechless. Fortunately, Qin Shing had a good impression of Liang Shuang. Although there were these stories between them in the past, their relationship was still good, and there was no conflict. So Qin Shing replied, I wandered from place to place in order to make a living, unlike you high-ranking officials' children or rich second-generation children. Nowadays, most of the time, I am in Beijing or Shanghai. If there is time, we can also get together. As for this class reunion, it is to accompany Xia Ding to kill time, and at the same time to meet old friends like you. Oh, no wonder. I was wondering why you were not on the list, Liang Shuang said thoughtfully. In the future, if you are often in Shanghai, we can get together. I often come to Shanghai for business. If there is a chance, you can also go to Nanjing. Even if we can't be lovers, it is not bad to be friends. Whatever you say, Qin Shing said half-jokingly. Maybe it was because she was very happy to see Qin Shing again, or maybe it was because the conversation atmosphere was good. Liang Shuang seemed to be in a good mood. She chatted with Qin Shing for a long time before leaving. The others were quite envious of Qin Shing. After all, there were not many female students who came to attend this class reunion, not to mention someone as outstanding as Liang Shuang. Whoever had such a relationship with her would definitely be amazing in the future. At this time, almost all the students had arrived. The student who hosted the activity asked everyone to sit down. Liang Shuang had already left Qin Shing's place and sat together with a few beauties, talking and laughing. At this time, Xia Ding also came back. He had already seen Liang Shuang coming over, so he secretly laughed and said, Boss, are you going to continue the previous relationship? A dog's mouth can't spit out ivory, Qin Shing directly scolded. Xia Ding clicked his tongue in wonder and said, You don't say, this Liang Shuang is even more charming than when she was in university. If it were not for her in-laws being so powerful, I would also want to hook up with her. Oh, how powerful? Qin Shing asked curiously. Xia Ding laughed and said, Of course not as powerful as you, boss. But I heard that her in-laws are quite powerful in Sunan. I heard all this from Lao Si. He has seen Liang Shuang several times in Nanjing. Liang Shuang also asked about you, but Lao Si did not pay much attention to her. Qin Shing did not expect there to be such a story. No wonder Liang Shuang was qualified to attend the class reunion, and no wonder others dared not have too many ideas about Liang Shuang. The class reunion finally began. It was a very normal procedure, there were not too many complicated things. They welcomed the school leaders and teacher representatives who came to attend. Then it was the school leaders and the person in charge of the class reunion who gave a speech. The person who gave a speech on the school side was a vice president, which made Qin Xing a little surprised. He did not expect Fudan to pay so much attention to this. However, the person who gave a speech on the class reunion side was a student Qin Xing did not know. Qin Xing thought it was Chao Kefan. After all, he was the third in command of the student union back then. After Xia Ding explained, Qin Xing understood why. It turned out that there were actually a few big shots in this class reunion. For example, this student who gave a speech, his family was worth tens of billions. How could he be simple? Chapter 863. It was normal to play dumb during one's school days. Even now, many people would choose to keep a low profile. Therefore, it was not surprising that there were a few who played dumb in this class reunion. After all, during one's school days, most students had no choice. Whether it was personal freedom or financial freedom, most of them were controlled by their parents. Some students' families were stricter. Even if their families were worth tens of billions, they would only give less than 1,000 yuan of living expenses. Some elders in their families, even if they were provincial or ministerial officials, still behaved like they were invisible in school. This was all a problem of family education. For example, Lao Si in their dormitory kept a low profile during his 4 years in university. Only after he graduated did he realize that he was a super-rich second generation. Of course, not all families were like this. There were also many families that gave their juniors freedom or were relatively lenient. For example, Xia Ding's family was like this. There were also many who relied on their family background to get by with ease during their university days. This was a different choice for each family. Therefore, Qin Xing had never seen the person who was speaking at the moment in university, let alone had any impression of him. Now that he could speak as a representative and chat with the school leaders and classmates, it was obvious that he had already taken over the family business. On Qin Xing's left was Xia Ding. On his right was a classmate who used to play basketball in the same dormitory. This kid started his own business from scratch after graduation. It was said that he was now worth hundreds of millions. Now that the company's financing had reached the C-series, he could be considered an elite in this class reunion. However, he did not feel complacent because of his current success. He even took the initiative to sit beside Qin Xing and Xia Ding and chat. He did not talk about work, etc. He only talked about the interesting things in the past. Back then, he often came to their dormitory to freeload Xia Ding's videos, so Qin Xing had a good impression of him. Lao Qin, if it wasn't for Xia Ding, I really didn't know you were in Shanghai. When can we have a good gathering? The man called Lu Yi patted Qin Xing's shoulder and laughed. Qin Xing had a good impression of Lu Yi in the past. He felt good about Lu Yi now too. He said casually, "Sure, as long as I'm in Shanghai, any time is fine. I'm just afraid that you, as the CEO, don't have time." "That's right, Lu Yi, you're the CEO now. Who knows, maybe one day your company will be listed and you'll be worth tens of billions. Maybe you'll be the representative of the next class reunion. We'll have to suck up to you." Xia Ding had met Lu Yi a few times. Lu Yi laughed and scolded him. 10 billion my ass. It's not easy to start a business. Nowadays, the streets are full of CEOs. Tomorrow they might sweep the street. If my Series C can't be financed, I will go bankrupt in a few days. I'm not like you, a second-generation rich kid. You eat, drink and play every day and don't need to worry about these things. Is it really that bad? Xia Ding frowned as he listened to the dignified speech. He had a good impression of Louis, and he heard that his project was not bad. If he was really short of money, he did not mind investing in it. After all, he already controlled a certain amount of finances. Louis shook his head and smiled bitterly. What do you think? Every family had its own difficulties. Don't be fooled by these students' bright and glamorous appearances. Who knew how much hardship they had to endure behind the scenes? Even a rich second generation like Xia Ding would have their own pressures to bear, let alone an entrepreneur like Lu Yi who had built his business from scratch. Just when Xia Ding was about to say that he would go to Lu Yi's company for a stroll, Qin Xing had already taken the initiative to offer an olive branch. If you have time, send me your company's information. I'll help you ask if there are any investment institutions interested. Xia Ding did not expect Qin Xing to take the initiative and was somewhat surprised. He was afraid that Lu Yi would ignore Qin Xing and think that Qin Xing was just being polite or showing off casually. He quickly said, Lu Yi, quickly thank Lao Qin. He knows more local tycoons than I do. Maybe he can solve your Series C problem. Lu Yi was a little puzzled. Qin Xing did not look like he was in the capital circle. Otherwise, why had he not heard any news about Qin Xing? However, since Xia Ding had said so, he did not think much about it. Now that things had come to this, he could only treat it as a last resort. What if? The representatives on the stage had finished their speeches, and the students from the class association on behalf of the entire student association, the person in charge had donated 30 million yuan to Fudan University for a scholarship. It was said that the student whose family was worth 10 billion yuan had borne the limit of 10 million yuan alone. The rest was crowd-funded by the other big shots in the student association. Even Xia Ding had donated 1 million yuan. Xia Ding had even told Qin Xing about this. Don't be fooled by the fact that the big shots in the student association were usually good at boasting. They would only be able to see the essence when there was a real problem. They were all stingy like misers. It was not easy to gather this 20 million yuan. Qin Xing explained with a smile. Do you think that rich people's money falls from the sky? They are smart with their money. If you ask him to buy a sports car or watch for himself, he can easily spend millions or even tens of millions. But if you ask him to donate, he may not necessarily do so. However, if you ask him to donate to Fudan University alone, he may donate tens of millions. Have you ever seen a successful person donating to his alma mater in the way you do? Xia Ding thought about it carefully, and it seemed to be the case. It seemed that he had learned something. At the same time, he felt that he had donated too much 1 million yuan. After the welcoming event ended, it was free time. Everyone could wander around the campus and reminisce about the good times in university. They could also visit their former teachers. However, it was still summer, so most of the teachers might not be in school. At the same time, the school had arranged a special place for them with fruits and snacks, so that everyone could interact and get closer to each other. Anyway, there were still 2 hours before the banquet. During this period, everyone could make their own arrangement. As soon as Qin Xing walked out of the lecture hall, he was stopped by Chao Kefen. Xia Ding's jinx was right. He felt somewhat helpless. He was about to ask if his aunt was in school so that he could have a cup of tea with her. Chao Kefen, who was now surrounded by a few students, walked up to Qin Xing and said, Qin Xing, do you still remember me? I'm Chao Kefen from the Student Association. I didn't expect to see you here. You don't seem to be on the list. It seemed like a greeting, but it was obviously a mockery. How could Chao Kefen not know who was not on the list? Of course, he was saying that Qin Xing was not doing well. Only those who were doing well could join the class gathering. Qin Xing did not care and said honestly, I haven't joined the class gathering yet. I'm just here to join in the fun. Oh, I knew it. It's okay. I'll recommend you to join the class gathering later. But I have to say, it's not certain whether you will be approved or not. After all, the class gathering is not decided by me alone, Chao Kefan said generously. If Qin Sheng was not grateful, he would be a little ungrateful. Unfortunately, Qin Sheng did not give face to Chao Kefan. He directly shook his head and said, "No need." Qin Sheng did not fall into the trap, but Chao Kefan did not stop there. He continued to change the topic and asked, "By the way, Qin Sheng, why didn't you bring Su Qin here? I haven't seen her for a long time. I heard that she is quite powerful now. When are you getting married? Remember to inform me. I'll prepare a big red packet for you." Chao Kefan was obviously looking for trouble. He knew that Qin Sheng and Su Qin had broken up long ago, but he still asked Qin Sheng this deliberately. Xia Ding was a little annoyed and said, "Chao Kefan, what the hell do you mean? Are we very familiar with you?" Being scolded by Xia Ding, Chao Kefan also felt a little embarrassed. He said, "Xia Ding, who are you scolding? What's wrong with me? We are classmates. I'm just asking. Can't I?" "You're meddling in other people's business." Obviously, neither of them was afraid of the other. Chao Kefan could become the vice president of the student union at that time. Naturally, his family background was not simple. But Xia Ding was not weak either. Moreover, he was standing up for Qin Sheng. What was there to be afraid of? Qin Sheng did not want to make things big at the class gathering. He said disapprovingly, "I've broken up with Su Qin, so you don't have to give me your red packet." "Oh, you've broken up? Then I'm sorry. Chao Kefan apologized very politely, but the expression on his face showed that he did not mean to apologize. Then he said, "Well, it's good that you broke up. Su Qin is so outstanding. You may not be worthy of her. Breaking up is something that will happen sooner or later. Don't be sad. You will find a better one sooner or later." This was already a naked insult. Xia Ding could not bear it anymore. He did not want to talk to Chao Kefan at all. He wanted to directly teach this guy a lesson. However, Qin Sheng still pulled Xia Ding and said, "You don't need to worry about this. If there's nothing else, we'll leave first." This time, Chao Kefan did not stop him, and Qin Sheng did not argue with him either. They directly left with Xia Ding. After they walked far away, Chao Kefan, who was behind them, laughed out loud. This kind of humiliation gave him an unprecedented pleasure and sense of accomplishment. "Qin Sheng, weren't you very powerful in school? Now that you have entered society, you still have to bow to reality. Do you dare to offend me?" At the same time, Chao Kefan's friends next to him helped him. They did not know why Su Qin was so blind that she chose such a boyfriend. She really had no taste. Some people also said, "Su Qin did not look for you, Lao Chao. That was her own bad luck." Some people said, "I knew they would break up. Su Qin was so outstanding. What was Qin Sheng?" This was the way of the circle. Sometimes, when you were in a good position, there would be people who could not wait to stand up for you without saying anything. Chao Kefan had long been used to this kind of environment. After all, these classmates who were in Shanghai still needed his help more or less. After Qin Sheng walked far away, Xia Ding could not help but say, "Boss, what's going on? Why did you stop me?" Qin Sheng felt it a little funny and said, "Is it necessary? If I really want to deal with him, I don't need to do it here. There are so many classmates watching. As long as he does not go too far, I will let it go. But if he really goes too far, don't blame me for being rude." After Xia Ding heard that, he sighed and said, "When did your temper become so good? I just want to calm down in Shanghai. There is no need to make things difficult for anyone. If I really want to make trouble, Beijing is more lively than Shanghai." Qin Sheng held his head with his hands and said with nothing to do. He thought about the disturbance with Chen Taihe a few days ago. Until now, there was no movement at all. Could it be that Chen Taihe really chose to let it go? Xia Ding was called away by a classmate who had a good relationship with him. Qin Sheng had nothing to do, so he called his small aunt. His small aunt was really in Fudan University. However, she had just come out from the principal's office. Qin Xing smiled and said that he was also in Fudan University. Zhu Qingwen did not believe it. Qin Xing asked his small aunt to wait there, and he would come over immediately. Zhu Qingwen waited for a few minutes in the general office building. Qin Xing appeared in front of her. He laughed and said, "Small aunt, are you surprised? Why did you come to school?" Zhu Qingwen was very puzzled. Of course, she knew that Qin Xing graduated from Fudan University. The most regretful thing was that she did not know Qin Xing's identity when he was studying at Fudan University. If she had known, how good it would have been. Qin Xing deliberately joked and said, "If I said I came to see you, small aunt, would you believe me?" "Yes, yes, yes. I believe everything you say." Zhu Qingwen touched the back of Qin Xing's head and said happily. No matter Qin Xing or Qin Ran, no matter how old they were, they would always be children in front of her. Zhu Qingwen casually found a bench and sat down. Only then did Qin Xing smile and explain what was going on. After listening to him, Zhu Qingwen finally understood. No wonder Qin Xing came to look for her. Anyway, she had nothing to do at the moment, so Qin Xing had nothing to do. Zhu Qingwen pulled Qin Xing to sit on the bench and chatted. They talked about some trivial things in life. Most of what Qin Xing talked about was his college life in Fudan University. Such a casual scene between Zhu Qingwen and Qin Xing was seen by a man and a woman coming out of the general building. The woman saw Qin Xing chatting happily with the female leader of the school, whom she seemed to know a little. She was somewhat surprised. How did Qin Xing know her? When the man saw this scene, he was not surprised at all. He had heard about this relationship, and now it was just a direct proof. The woman was no other than Liang Shuang, the beautiful campus belle who was born in a diplomatic family. The man was relatively low-key during his college days. Now that he returned to school, he was the one who played the pig to eat the tiger on behalf of his classmates. Seeing Liang Shuang's puzzled expression, the man lowered his head and chuckled. "Are you surprised?" Liang Shuang replied directly, "Do you know something that I don't? Do you want to know?" The man deliberately kept her in suspense. Liang Shuang said without hesitation, "Yes." The man was still keeping her in suspense. He sighed and said, Liang Shuang, if you had persisted for 2 more years, maybe your family would have been successful by now. How could you be content with a corner?" Chapter 864. The man's name was Yang Yunfeng. He was 30 years old and wanted to get married and start a career. His family elders wanted to send him abroad to study in high school, which was a normal choice for most rich and powerful families. They hoped that their heirs would have an international vision and culture, which would be of great help to the family business in the future. If they went abroad after college or postgraduate, it would be difficult to integrate into foreign circles. Therefore, most of the elders hoped that their heirs would go abroad to study in junior high school, so that it would be easier to integrate. However, his grandparents did not want him to go abroad. They just wanted to keep this eldest grandson by their side. In addition, he was reluctant to leave his friends and was even more unwilling to leave his hometown. So he stayed in Shanghai until he graduated from college and studied an MBA in a business school abroad. After graduation, he directly returned to China to take over. The Yang family was a famous real estate developer in Jiangsu, Zhejiang, and Shanghai. Their real estate could be seen everywhere, but they were not national developers. They had been very stable in recent years. Just like Yang Yunfeng's life, he was low-key in college and was thought to be from an ordinary family. It was not until he went to the United States to study abroad that people guessed that his family might not be simple. When he returned to China to take over, they were directly shocked. Yang Yunfeng was also quite famous in the circle of Shanghai, but he was relatively low-key. He spent most of his time busy with work. Even his marriage was arranged by his family. His wife was the daughter of a rich man in Hong Kong. This choice was normal for his family. Yang Yunfeng accepted it calmly and did not resist. The woman was beautiful, had good family background and education, and so on. Why would he not agree? It was not surprising that Yang Yunfeng could recognize Qin Sheng. That was because he not only knew Yan Chaozong, but he also knew Wei Li, who was well known in Hangzhou. Although he could not be considered as Wei Li's confidant, he was still a friend who had frequent dealings with him. After all, most of his family's projects were in Zhujiang. At this moment, Qin Sheng, who was chatting with his aunt, did not know that this scene had been seen by his two classmates. Even if they saw it, so what? Even if they knew his relationship with the Zhu family, so what? Qin Sheng was too lazy to worry about these things. He could not pay attention to everyone's eyes and mouth. Liang Shuang obviously didn't know these things. Her impression of Qin Sheng was still the same Qin Sheng. Although she could feel that Qin Sheng had changed, Liang Shuang still stubbornly believed that Qin Sheng was still the same Qin Sheng. Maybe it was because she liked him. She liked the Qin Sheng in the past. As for what Qin Sheng was doing now, Liang Shuang did not think about it at all. No matter how good or bad Qin Sheng was doing, it had nothing to do with her. Was he doing better than her husband? Was he better than Yang Yunfeng and Chao Kefen? No matter how bad he was, he graduated from Fudan University. At most, he was an ordinary office worker. No wonder Su Qin broke up with him, because he knew that Su Qin was a fair, rich and beautiful woman. Yang Yunfeng's sudden words puzzled Liang Shuang. What did he mean by if she had persevered for 2 more years, her family would have made a meteoric rise? Could it be that this ordinary-looking Qin Sheng had a powerful background? Impossible, I've never heard of it before. Instead of asking directly, Liang Shuang asked, Yang Yunfeng, do you know him? Of course I know him. Otherwise I wouldn't have said that, Yang Yunfeng said calmly. He had always done things calmly, and would never do anything out of line. Therefore, the elders in his family were very assured of him. Liang Shuang was even more puzzled. She asked, Then why didn't I see you greet him at the welcoming ceremony just now? Yang Yunfeng lowered his voice and replied, Because I know him, but he doesn't know me. Moreover, I'm not qualified to greet him on my own accord. I don't want to leave a bad impression on others. The more Yang Yunfeng spoke, the more vague it became. However, Liang Shuang was not an ordinary woman. Born in a diplomatic family, she was smarter than most women. Otherwise, how could she be so smooth and slick in front of her in-laws? She could not find any fault with the way the family treated her. She could not help but say, Yang Yunfeng, you must be joking. Do you think Qin Sheng is so important to you? If you're not qualified, who is? If he's really so powerful, why haven't I heard any news about him? Is Su Qin willing to give up on him? There are many things I don't know, but I only know the facts I know. Since you still don't understand, then I'll make it clear. You must know the background of that professor, right? Yang Yunfeng did not think it was a secret. He just took it as an interesting thing to chat with Liang Shuang. After all, he was very close to Liang Shuang. After all, he and Liang Shuang's husband were bad friends. Liang Shuang said thoughtfully, I didn't know when I was in school. Later, I heard it from the elders in my family. Yang Yunfeng said slowly, I know better than you that our professor's husband is the leader of this city. Our old man is his friend, not to mention our professor's father who has passed away and her brother who is at the peak of his career. Yang Yunfeng said slowly. Liang Shuang knew something and didn't, but she said disdainfully, What does it have to do with Qin Sheng? Why not? Yang Yunfeng did not know whether Liang Shuang did it on purpose or not. He smiled and said, Then do you know what's the relationship between Qin Sheng and this professor? After waiting for so long, he finally got to the point. Liang Shuang asked unhurriedly, What's the relationship? Then let me tell you, our professor is Qin Shing's aunt. Qin Shing is our professor's nephew. Of course, they are related. Now you know, right? Yang Yunfeng kept her guessing for so long, and now he was finally willing to tell her the answer. After Liang Shuang heard it, she was stunned for a long time. After she came to her senses, she was very shocked and said, "How is it possible? Yang Yunfeng, is what you said true?" Yang Yunfeng was not surprised by Liang Shuang's expression. When he recognized Qin Shing just now, he was also a little surprised. He did not expect that Qin Shing was actually a classmate of the same grade. However, Yang Yunfeng could not find a suitable opportunity to get to know Qin Shing, because he knew that this classmate's temper was not very good. Now there was a rumor that the disappearance of Yen Chaozong from the Yen family had something to do with this classmate. It was said that the two had been enemies for several years, but the Yen family could not do anything about this classmate now. It seemed that they had taken the initiative to make peace. What's more, when he was in Hangzhou, he heard Wei Li casually talk about other things about this classmate. It seemed that the recent unrest in Hangzhou was also related to this classmate. Yang Yunfeng did not dare to mess around with such a ruthless character. If he could not be a friend, he should not be an enemy. It's up to you whether you believe it or not. Just don't tell others that I told you this later. I can't afford to offend you, Yang Yunfeng said disapprovingly. Of course, there were many things that he did not intend to tell Liang Shuang. It was a world that Liang Shuang could not reach, and it was also a level that he could not reach. What they said today was just a coincidental interlude. Liang Shuang did not think that Yang Yunfeng was lying to her. Yang Yunfeng would not go so far as to make up such a strange and dazzling story for Qin Shing. What's more, the atmosphere of the conversation between this professor and Qin Shing seemed to be really intimate. If they were not relatives, Liang Shuang would almost think too much. Could it be that Qin Shing was really as powerful as Yang Yunfeng said? Could it be that she had really missed this wonderful horse? Yang Yunfeng seemed to have guessed what Liang Shuang was thinking about. He smiled and said, "If it's not yours, you can't catch it at all. If it's yours, you can't escape no matter what. If you really caught up with Qin Shing that year, maybe your family is going through the biggest disaster now." Liang Shuang frowned and said, "What do you mean?" Yang Yunfeng did not explain. He just smiled and said that they should go back. There were so many classmates waiting for them over there. When they left, Yang Yunfeng did not forget to take a detour in case this classmate found out. He did not want to go too far. After a moment of silence, Liang Shuang turned around and looked at Qin Shing. It seemed that the current Qin Shing was no longer the same as before. Qin Shing understood. It turned out that all men were calm because they had confidence. She sighed silently and finally left the comprehensive building quietly. On the other side, Zhu Qingwen and Qin Shing chatted for a long time. Recently, they had not seen each other often. Most of the time, there were other people around. Every time they talked, it was about business. They had never chatted so casually like today. It was really like a small aunt and a nephew chatting here. Time passed unknowingly. When Xia Ding called Qin Shing, it was almost dinner time. Zhu Qingwen originally wanted to bring Qin Shing to dinner and call Lin Su over. Xia Ding said that there were still a few classmates waiting to see him, so Qin Shing could only say that he would do it another day. Anyway, he would be in Shanghai during this period of time, so he could visit his small aunt at any time. Zhu Qingwen did not ask Qin Shing to stay and let him leave just like that. Looking at Qin Shing's back as he left, Zhu Qingwen still felt a little regretful that she did not reconcile with Qin Shing earlier. If that was the case, she would have been able to see Qin Shing's carefree college days. When she saw Qin Shing was already burdened with all kinds of pressure and responsibilities. After Qin Shing came back, Xia Ding was already very close with a group of classmates. Among them, there were a few that Qin Shing knew in the past but was not familiar with. Now that they could join this class reunion, it meant that they were doing well now. With Xia Ding's introduction, everyone got familiar with each other very quickly. Not long after, it was dinner time. Everyone then went to the hotel that they had booked. The hotel was not far from Fudan University. It was a high-standard 5-star hotel. Students from other cities also stayed here at night. This saved everyone the trouble. The seats for the dinner were not particular. Except for the main table, which was reserved, everyone could sit at will. To be honest, the arrangement for this class reunion was quite good. The people in charge of the class reunion took care of everyone's mood. Naturally, Qin Xing sat together with Xia Ding and a few friends that he knew. In this way, everyone would not be too embarrassed with each other. Those who attended the dinner were all classmates of the class reunion. Although the school leaders and teachers were invited, they did not come. Perhaps they felt that they could not let go of themselves if they were there. After the people in charge of the class reunion finished speaking, dinner began. Chao Kefen was one of them. What he said was also dignified and polite words. At the beginning, after everyone started drinking, they began to toast each other. Even if they did not know each other, they could also build a relationship with each other because of drinking. Wasn't this how relationships came about? Originally, the people in charge of the class reunion or the big shots in the class reunion wanted to toast each other at the main table. But before they started, the others were already in a mess. They could only give up. They felt that this was also good. They followed the crowd and found familiar classmates and friends to drink. Whether it was Yang Yunfeng or Liang Shuang, it seemed that they did not take the initiative to find Qin Xing to drink. Liang Shuang did not know how to face Qin Xing now. Yang Yunfeng still insisted on his principles and did not want Qin Xing to think too much. There would be opportunities to get to know each other in the future. Xia Ding had already run away with a glass of wine. He knew many of the classmates here. After all, they were all in Shanghai. Moreover, Xia Ding was a rich second-generation rich. As for Qin Xing, other than drinking with the friends he knew at the table, he did not go out to toast anyone. He did not know anyone else. Similarly, no one came to toast him, because he was not in the class reunion. Today, he was just here to freeload. Of course, no one knew him. Qin Xing was in a good mood at this time. It was quite interesting to talk with these friends he knew in the past. It was just that everyone would ask about him and Su Qin. This made Qin Xing unable to escape at all. He could only answer every time. He originally thought that the class reunion would be over after drinking. Who knew that there were two pairs of eyes staring at him in this dinner party? One was his rival in love, Chao Kefen, who had once pursued Su Qin. The other was Yu Hai, who he had beaten up before. After 3 rounds of drinking, when everyone was almost drunk, the two of them whispered a few words to each other and walked to Qin Xing's table at the same time with their wine glasses. Chapter 865. Although the so-called class reunion was just a gathering of students who were doing well in society, this was the reality of society. Who didn't enter society like this? How could it be like when they were in school without thinking too much? Qin Xing had graduated for so many years and had been struggling in the society for so many years. How could he not know? How could he not understand? In order to live, if one wanted to gain a lot, he would naturally lose a lot. Because everyone wanted to live a better life. Even if not for themselves, they had to do it for their family, right? Therefore, he did not think too much about these things. This class reunion was quite interesting. At least he could meet these old friends, talk about the stories of these old friends, and reminisce about those good times. Now that he was burdened with pressure and responsibility, Qin Xing was still quite happy. It was so easy for him. However, there would always be flies who did not like you and wanted to find trouble with you. Otherwise, they would not be able to prove their existence. Chao Kefen and Yu Hai were such flies. It was not easy for them to meet Qin Xing. Now that they were doing well, How could they miss such an opportunity? An opponent who could not even get into the class reunion, and whom they had not heard from for years, was not a challenge to them at all. Therefore they came to court death. They could not blame others for this. It was their fault for not being at a high enough level. If they were at Yang Yunfeng's level, they would not court death like this. It was estimated that when they saw Qin Sheng, they would either try their best to get close to him or they would keep a respectful distance from him, knowing their limits. Qin Sheng came here with Xia Ding. If it was only Yu Hai, he would not have the confidence to fall out with Qin Sheng. After all, Xia Ding's family background was not simple and he was quite popular in the class reunion. There was no need to fight over this. After all, he relied on his girlfriend's family to gain a foothold in this city. That was how he got into the class reunion. However, now that he had Chao Kefan as his ally, Yu Hai naturally did not have to worry about anything. Chao Kefan would not be as afraid of Xia Ding as he was. Moreover, Chao Kefan would take action personally. He only needed to cooperate. What was there to hesitate about? Even if Xia Ding stood up for Qin Sheng, so what? He definitely had more friends on Chao Kefan's side than Xia Ding's. The current Chao Kefan could be said to be flushed with success. After graduating from school, everything had been smooth sailing. Whether it was his family background or his current level, he was one of the best in the class reunion. Otherwise, how could he have become one of the core figures in the class reunion? It was a pity that he could not get the goddess he wanted no matter how hard he tried. Maybe he would throw her away after he got her. However, for most men, what they could not get was often the best. Moreover, he used to like Su Qin so much. He liked her for several years, but Su Qin kept rejecting him. Whether it was when they were together in college or after they broke up, Su Qin did not give him a chance until he gave up completely. Chao Kefan did not understand what was so good about Qin Sheng. Although he did not know his family background, judging from his clothes and other aspects, he was just ordinary. His looks were just so. He was not handsome enough to make women fall in love with him, not to mention his ability. He just did not understand, so he had always resented Qin Sheng. It was just that when they were in college, Chao Kefan did not fight with Qin Sheng because of this matter, because of the so-called face and so on. He liked to show that he was mature and steady enough in front of outsiders. If he took revenge on Qin Sheng because of this matter, it would be too low. It would affect the teachers' and classmates' impression of him. This would not make up for the loss. However, it was different now. He did not need to worry about this anymore. Moreover, Qin Sheng was in such a terrible situation now, while he was so famous. It was not easy to get such an opportunity. How could he miss it? Therefore, Chao Kefan and Yu Hai hit it off and began their journey of courting death. At the table where Qin Sheng was sitting, except for the two classmates who had not come back yet after toasting, the others had already come back. Everyone was talking and laughing, talking about interesting trivia in life or showing off their wealth and so on. Wasn't it like this when one drank too much? He always wanted to show off something in front of his classmates, whether it was money, status, women, or resources and connections. Otherwise, how could he prove that he was doing better? Xia Ding had not come back yet. Sitting next to Qin Sheng was a student from the School of Economics and Management in the past. Now he was working in a quite famous private equity company and was already in charge of a fund independently. This kind of achievement was not low among the classmates. Back then, Qin Sheng often went to the School of Economics and Management to attend classes. Gradually, he got to know this top student from the School of Economics and Management. Originally, he thought that this guy would definitely enter the 4 big banks after graduation. He did not expect that he would eventually go on the road of private equity. Qin Sheng was not a stranger to private equity. If it was in the past, Qin Sheng might be quite interested. But now, as the successor of the Chang, an empire in the domestic capital field, Such a low-end thing as private equity had nothing to do with Qin Shing at all. After all, Chang, an empire, was now a full-license financial holding empire. They played with high-end capital operations, which were easily worth billions of capital operations. Although Qin Shing did not want to listen, this student talked to his heart's content. First, he said that it was not easy for him in the past few years, and how he got to where he was today step by step. Then he talked about the gossip and rumors in the financial circle, regardless of whether Qin Shing was listening or not. Qin Shing had no choice but to listen perfunctorily. After all, he could not win the face of others. Anyway, when Xia Ding came back, it was almost time. He had already asked Chang Baji to pick them up. Xia Ding had drunk a lot, so he must send him home safely. Otherwise, he would not be able to explain to Qin. At this time, Chao Kefen walked over slowly with Yu Hai holding a glass of wine. He did not look for Qin Shing directly, otherwise, his purpose would be too obvious. Instead, he looked for the private equity manager next to Qin Shing and said, "Lao Wang, I heard that you have been doing well in the past 2 years. You have earned 2 apartments in Shanghai. When are you going to lead your brothers in corruption?" When the private equity manager called Lao Wang saw Chao Kefen and Yu Hai, he quickly stood up and flattered them. "Director Chao, you are too polite. I only have the stench of money. How can I be compared to Director Chao? In the future, I will still need to rely on Director Chao in Shanghai. When Director Chao becomes successful one day, don't forget us, old classmate." Chao Kefen enjoyed such words very much. He patted Lao Wang's shoulder and said, "Look at what you are saying. You are treating me like an outsider. We are all old classmates, of course we have to support each other. If there is anything in Shanghai, feel free to call me. Let's get together more often." When Lao Wang heard this, he was very happy and said, "Oh, of course." Yu Hai cooperated at the right time and said, "Lao Wang, in Shanghai, there is nothing that our chairman Chao can't do. It depends on whether you are smart or not, ha 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 ha." "Yu Hai, you are talking too much, but I can definitely help with small things." Chao Kefen first stared at Yu Hai, then followed up and said, Okay. Let's not talk about these empty words. We are all classmates. Come on, let's drink." They clinked their glasses and said some polite words. After flattering each other and greeting each other, Chao Kefen and Yu Hai looked at each other and looked at Qin Shing. Chao Kefen thought for a few seconds and said loudly, "Qin Shing, I really did not expect to see you at this class reunion. Why haven't I heard any news about you in the past few years?" Qin Shing was not surprised that Chao Kefen was looking for him. When Chao Kefen and Yu Hai walked over, he knew that these two were definitely up to no good. Because there must be something wrong when something abnormal happened. How could there be anything good when these two were together? When Chao Kefen looked for Lao Wang immediately stood up, for fear that Chao Kefen would be angry if he was 2 seconds late. However, when Chao Kefen looked for Qin Shing did not have any intention of standing up. This made Chao Kefen and Yu Hai somewhat dissatisfied. Qin Shing did not stay silent. He just smiled and said, "I am not doing well, so I am embarrassed to contact my classmates, unlike you." Although Qin Shing did not stand up, Chao Kefen still restrained himself and said, Hey, Qin Shing, don't be modest. I believe that the boyfriend that Su Qin chose back then, how could he not be doing well? Su Qin even rejected me. You must have made a meteoric rise and are unwilling to contact us, your old classmate." Qin Shing was a little worried because of Su Qin. He hoped that everything would go well for Su Qin, but it seemed that she was not doing well, which made Qin Shing a little worried. So he did not want others to talk about Su Qin. This afternoon, when Chao Kefen talked about Su Qin, Qin Shing was already very unhappy. Now he used Su Qin to annoy him. How could Qin Shing bear it? Whether I am doing well or not, it has nothing to do with Su Qin. What does it have to do with me? Qin Sheng was very unhappy. Obviously, Qin Sheng was not happy. Chao Kefen hoped that Qin Sheng would be like this. The angrier Qin Sheng was, the more he would feel a sense of accomplishment. So he said, Oh, that's right. If you are doing well, you will not come to the class gathering. We will definitely take the initiative to invite you. Ah. At this time, the atmosphere of the conversation between the two was already very intense. Anyone could hear that some people knew what had happened in the past, but most people did not know, so they did not understand. Qin Sheng sneered and said, So you mean that if you are not doing well, you should not have classmates? Seeing that Qin Sheng was so arrogant, Yu Hai said angrily, Qin Sheng, what do you mean? President Chao is talking to you. What kind of attitude is that? Do you really think that you are a big shot? Qin Sheng chuckled and said, I am just a name. I am not a big shot. Big shots are all people like you who are doing well. Who asked me to be not doing well? If you are not doing well, you still have the face to attend the class gathering. Why? If you want to build a relationship with these classmates, you should look in the mirror and see if you have the ability to do so. Yu Hai retorted very bluntly. His words were even more direct than Chao Kefen's. The atmosphere here had already made people feel nervous. The others at the table looked at each other and did not know what was going on. Why did the conversation become like this? Some people wanted to help Chao Kefen. Some also felt that Qin Sheng's attitude was a bit bad. This was President Chao, Division Chief Chao. His future was bright. It was not good to offend him. Of course, there were also people who wanted to persuade Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng still sat in the same way. He was too lazy to say anything to Yu Hai. He was just a small character. It was not enough to make him fly into a rage. Chao Kefen said, Yu Hai, listen to what you said. We are all classmates. There is no such thing as doing well or not doing well. Don't let other students see you as a joke. President is right. It's my fault, Yu Hai said in a low voice. But the way he looked at Qin Sheng was still very unfriendly. After Chao Kefen scolded Yu Hai, he looked at Qin Sheng again and said, Qin Sheng, no matter whether you are doing well or not now, I hope you will do well in the future. Otherwise, I really feel sorry for Su Qin. Why did she choose you that year? Don't let me down. Let's not talk about this. Come on, let's have a drink. After that, Chao Kefen poured a glass of wine for himself and filled up Qin Sheng's glass. Originally, there was already a lot of wine in Qin Sheng's glass. If Chao Kefen continued to fill it up for Qin Sheng, it would be somewhat bullying. It was an obvious fact. Everyone at the table did not dare to say anything. There was no need to stand up for Qin Sheng and offend Chao Kefen. Qin Sheng was just a nobody. It was Xia Ding who brought him to attend the class gathering today. Chao Kefen had a bright future. Maybe they would need his help in the future. So it was not worth speaking up for Qin Sheng. Everyone thought that Qin Sheng did not dare to offend Chao Kefen and would definitely drink this glass of wine. However, Qin Sheng said something that shocked everyone. I don't drink. What the hell? Qin Sheng drank to his heart's content just now. How could it be that he didn't know how to drink with his drunken look? Everyone understood what Qin Sheng meant. That was, he did not give Chao Kefen any face. It was obvious that he wanted to offend Chao Kefen. Hearing this, Chao Kefen squinted his eyes and said playfully, Qin Sheng, what do you mean? Yu Hai also said angrily, Qin Sheng, don't be so shameless. Today you have to drink this glass of wine whether you want or not. It's up to you. Qin Sheng directly poured all the wine in the glass into the bowl and said disapprovingly, What if I don't drink? This sentence directly made Chao Kefen and Yu Hai's faces change. He really did not give them any face. Then don't blame us. At this moment, the farce here had attracted everyone's attention. After all, it had become so big. Xia Ding still thought what was going on. When he saw Chao Kefin and Yu Hai standing in front of Qin Xing, he realized that these two guys must be looking for trouble with Qin Xing. He quickly put down his glass and walked over. Chapter 866. Are we familiar with each other? Yang Yunfeng didn't drink much. After all, he was the most powerful person in the class reunion. Have you ever seen anyone with the highest status get drunk first? Most of the time, it was those who didn't have a high status who got drunk first. They kept toasting and drinking. After a few rounds, they were almost drunk. After all, no one was born a drunkard who didn't get drunk. Except for Yang Yunfeng, who drank 2 glasses with the few people at the main table, others came over to toast him. Even if they were toasting, Yang Yunfeng only pointed to the right spot, but others had to drink it all. How could they get drunk? The others at the main table went out to toast each table, but Yang Yunfeng didn't mean to do so at all. He said that he didn't want to disturb everyone's interest. After all, he was not familiar with them. He was too low-key in college, much more low-key than Yu Kefi, who was a local tyrant in Nanjing. He had no sense of existence at all in college. As for Liang Shuang, she was a female classmate after all. Although she was very famous in college, it was impossible for them to compete with her in drinking. They just chatted with each other. Even so, Liang Shuang was still a little drunk. She usually drank some red wine at most. The people at the main table were the core members of the student union, who were also the best. Such a big movement naturally attracted their attention. Everyone looked at each other and didn't know what was going on. The most important thing was that Chao Kefin was there. Everyone was ready to get up and see what was going on. Someone saw that Qin Xing and Chao Kefin had a conflict and couldn't help muttering, "Why is Qin Xing fighting with Chao Kefin? He didn't seem to join our class reunion. Who brought him in?" There were also some who subconsciously stood on Chao Kefin's side and shouted, "If he's not from our student union, just drive him out." Just when everyone was about to get up and stand up, Yang Yunfeng didn't want the class reunion to fall apart because of this matter. He stood up directly and said, "If you listen to my advice and don't want to get yourself into trouble, sit here obediently today. Even if there is a fight over there, don't go and join in the fun." "Brother Yang, what do you mean?" someone asked in confusion. At this time, Liang Shuang had already stood up. She sized up the crowd and chuckled. "Yang Yunfeng is doing this for your own good. Listen to his advice and eat your fill. However, if you really want to court death, don't blame us for not advising you in the future. Don't think that you're doing well now, and don't think that you can do whatever you want just because of your family background." Everyone present was the core of the student union. Whether it was IQ or EQ, they were definitely not low. Otherwise, how could they have gotten to where they were today? Yang Yunfeng and Liang Shuang both said such words at the same time. This was not their usual way of being kind to others. Everyone vaguely felt that something was wrong. Could it be that Qin Sheng was not simple? Everyone stopped talking and didn't plan to join in the fun. They just sat there and stared. It wouldn't be long before they found out what was going on. Anyway, it had nothing to do with them, so they just treated it as a show. "Are you really going to join in the fun?" Liang Shuang already knew what Yang Yunfeng wanted to do and asked in a low voice. Yang Yunfeng had already weighed the pros and cons. He said bluntly, "Don't you think this is a good opportunity? Aren't you afraid that it will backfire?" Liang Shuang asked. She didn't care. It didn't matter if he went or not. However, Yang Yunfeng and Qin Xing had never been in contact before. If he went to stand up for Qin Xing, he wouldn't be afraid that Qin Xing would overthink. Qin Xing could hide so deeply, it could be seen that he was not simple. Yang Yunfeng thought deeper than Liang Shuang. He replied directly, "There will be problems if I don't go." Why? Because Yang Yunfeng's circle had already intersected with Qin Xing. He knew Qin Xing's identity and background. He didn't greet him because he didn't know him. He didn't want Qin Sheng to feel that it was too deliberate. However, now that Qin Sheng was in trouble, he had already recognized Qin Sheng, and they had mutual friends. If Qin Sheng accidentally found out one day, he, Yang Yunfeng, would not have a good impression of Qin Sheng at all. Liang Shuang didn't understand what Yang Yunfeng meant. She didn't know all the details of Qin Sheng. Just as she frowned and pondered, Yang Yunfeng chuckled and said, "Then you won't go?" Liang Shuang was a little hesitant. She used to pursue Qin Sheng, but it ended in vain. They didn't have any contact over the years. Now, because of the reunion, they met again. Moreover, she knew Qin Sheng's strength. In the past, she still had some confidence in front of Qin Sheng. How could she have any confidence now? Yang Yunfeng said half-jokingly, "Even if we can't be lovers, we can still be friends, right?" After Liang Shuang thought for a moment, she finally nodded silently and followed Yang Yunfeng to the other side slowly. The others were confused. They had no idea what the two were talking about. However, those who were observant could hear some general meaning and were even more sure of their thoughts. On the other side, the atmosphere had reached the extreme. It could be said that both sides were not giving in. If this went on, everyone present felt that they might fight. Qin Sheng didn't give Chao Kefen any face at all. He said bluntly, "If I don't drink, what can you do to me?" Chao Kefen was so embarrassed. How could he lose his face? No matter what, he had to make Qin Sheng drink this glass of wine. "Qin Sheng, are you not giving me face?" Chao Kefen replied with a gloomy face. It seemed that he was on the verge of exploding. Yu Hai also stared at Qin Sheng angrily. Qin Sheng was still so calm. He didn't take them seriously at all. He said disdainfully, "Why should I give you face? Are we that close?" It was the same words again. Qin Sheng directly refuted Chao Kefen until he was expressionless. The others also began to criticize Qin Sheng one after another. They felt that Qin Sheng was a little too much. It seemed that they were all standing on Chao Kefen's side. Who asked Chao Kefen to be doing well? If Qin Sheng was doing well, it might be a different scene. This was the reality of society, the complexity of people's hearts. Yu Hai took 2 steps forward and directly threatened, "Qin Sheng, don't go too far. Be careful, trouble comes from the mouth." Qin Sheng was a little bored. What was the point of arguing with them? He did not respond. It was almost time to leave. If they really dared to stop him, they should not blame him for fighting. Chao Kefen wanted to say a few words, but Xia Ding had already rushed over. He directly pushed Yu Hai, who was in front of Qin Sheng, and said, "Yu Hai, who the F***ck do you think you are? How dare you speak here? Why are you looking for trouble?" Both Yu Hai and Chao Kefen were not surprised to see Xia Ding rushing out. They had originally counted Xia Ding in. Chao Kefen thought that Xia Ding would not dare to offend him. He looked at Xia Ding and sneered, "Xia Ding, are you sure you want to stand up for him?" Who knew that Xia Ding would be so hot-tempered? He directly scolded, "F***ck. Who the F***ck do you think you are? How dare you show off here? Believe it or not, I will kill you." Xia Ding was also drunk. That was why he was so hot-tempered. If it was a normal day, he would not be like this. Moreover, Qin Sheng had been under a lot of pressure recently. It was not easy for him to come back to Shanghai to relax, but he encountered such a disgusting thing. How could he bear it? No one expected that Xia Ding would be even more arrogant than Qin Sheng. He directly scolded. This was the rhythm of a fight. The whole class reunion was already in chaos. Everyone gathered here. When Yu Hai heard Xia Ding's words, he flew into a rage. He directly rushed up and wanted to beat Chao Kefen up. At this critical moment, he had to show his loyalty. Otherwise, how could he get closer to Chao Kefen in the future? However, he was stopped by Chao Kefen. Chao Kefen asked in surprise, "Xia Ding, you are courting death. Do you know what you are saying?" Hey, what are you threatening me? I am not afraid. Who the f***ck do you think you are? Others flatter you a little, and you really think you can go to heaven? Xia Ding retorted mercilessly. Chao Kefen's patience had reached the limit. He said fiercely, Xia Ding, this is Shanghai. Don't blame me for not reminding you. This time, before Xia Ding said anything, Qin Xing stood up happily and said, Oh, this is Shanghai. From what you said, you want us to be careful in Shanghai. Qin Xing, if you admit your mistake and apologize to me now, I may consider forgiving you. But if you don't know what's good for you, don't blame me for not giving you a chance today. Chao Kefen was very unhappy. He was very unhappy. In fact, even if Qin Xing apologized today, he would not forgive Qin Xing. He would definitely take revenge. When had he been slapped in the face like this? Moreover, it was a so-called classmate who was not doing well. When Qin Xing heard this, he shrugged and said, Whatever. After that, Qin Xing was too lazy to care about Chao Kefen and Yu Hai anymore. He shouted to Xia Ding that it was time for Lao San to go, and then prepared to leave directly. At this time, Yang Yunfeng and Liang Shuang finally appeared. He intentionally or unintentionally blocked Qin Xing's way, but said to Chao Kefen and the others, Chao Kefen, what's going on? Chao Kefen was about to explain what was going on, but Yang Yunfeng did not give Chao Kefen any chance at all. He directly reprimanded, Chao Kefen, you are too arrogant. Quickly apologized to Qin Xing. What? Not to mention that Chao Kefen was dumbfounded when he heard this. Logically, shouldn't Yang Yunfeng stand up for him? He should reprimand Qin Xing mercilessly, and then directly drive Qin Xing and Xia Ding out. Why did he want him to apologize to Qin Xing now? Was Yang Yunfeng crazy or sick in the head? Qin Xing was also stunned. He also thought that Yang Yunfeng definitely wanted to stand up for Chao Kefen by blocking in front of him. If that was really the case, then don't blame him for taking revenge in the future. You can only blame Yang Yunfeng for being blind. However, the final result was like this. However, after pondering for a moment, Qin Xing understood what was going on. He could not help but smile. It seemed that this low-key student Yang Yunfeng should know his identity. Otherwise, why would he say such words? As long as it was a normal person, if he did not know his identity, he would not say such words. However, since he knew his identity long ago, why did he only show up now? Or was there any unspeakable secret in this? For example, in today's farce, was there any trace of this rich second generation? According to common sense, Yang Yunfeng and Qin Xing did not know each other. There was no past grievance or hatred between them. There was no need to make things difficult for him. Moreover, before coming to the class gathering today, no one knew that he was coming. However, Qin Xing still had to be careful. Who asked him to offend too many enemies? Chapter 867. From the beginning to the outbreak of the farce tonight, everyone thought that Qin Xing was destined to be no match for Chao Kefen. The final result might be to apologize to Chao Kefen. No one believed that Qin Xing dared to offend Chao Kefen. Wasn't he afraid of Chao Kefen's revenge? After all, this was the reality of this society. No one dared to offend those who had a strong background. However, Qin Xing shocked these men who thought that they were mature and steady. He fought Chao Kefen like a rash young man and did not give in at all. As a result, Chao Kefen was embarrassed. Everyone thought that Qin Xing was crazy, because the two of them were not at the same level at all. When Yang Yunfeng came, everyone also thought that this farce was coming to an end. Qin Xing dared to make trouble at the class gathering. This not only offended Chao Kefen, but also offended everyone in the class gathering. After all, Qin Xing was not a member of the class gathering. How many people would stand on Qin Xing's side? Now that Yang Yunfeng came, he must be on Chao Kefen's side. As long as Yang Yunfeng spoke, Perhaps Qin Sheng would not be able to enter the class gathering in the future. Some people were willing to offend Chao Kefen, but not necessarily Yang Yunfeng, the core of the class gathering. However, no one expected that after Yang Yunfeng spoke, he did not stand on Chao Kefen's side, but on Qin Sheng's side. He did not ask the reason at all and spoke on Qin Sheng's side, which surprised everyone. How could this be possible? Some people started to speculate. No wonder Qin Sheng was so confident. Could it be that Qin Sheng was close to Yang Yunfeng, which was why he was so fearless? Or did Qin Sheng have a background that others did not know about, which was why he could be so unscrupulous? Now, everyone was waiting for the drama below. Chao Kefen was really confused and did not come back to his senses for a long time. What did Yang Yunfeng mean? He did not ask what was going on and directly reprimanded him and asked him to apologize to Qin Sheng. Logically speaking, with his relationship with Yang Yunfeng would definitely stand on his side. Even if he did not stand on his side and wanted to be a peacemaker, he should first understand what was going on. What did he mean now? "Brother Yang, what are you doing?" Chao Kefen asked, frowning and gritting his teeth. He was already in a very embarrassing situation. Originally, he wanted to humiliate Qin Sheng, but he was slapped in the face by Qin Sheng. Now, Yang Yunfeng had turned the tables on him. Chao Kefen was a little flustered in an instant. He naturally did not dare to offend Yang Yunfeng. Xia Ding was a little puzzled as to what kind of show the two of them were putting up. Were they cooperating with each other? Of course, he knew that the relationship between Yang Yunfeng and Chao Kefen was not bad, so he wanted to say a few words for Qin Sheng. However, he was stopped by Qin Sheng. Let the two of them continue to perform. Anyway, what was there to be afraid of? Yang Yunfeng knew that Chao did not know he was in a desperate situation. He did not explain anything and continued shouting. "Chao Kefen, Chao. Qin you, I. I'd better shut up and let Chao Kefen handle the rest of the things. Don't blame me for not being loyal enough." At this moment, Chao Kefen was full of resentment and anger, not only for Qin Sheng, but also for Yang Yunfeng, the big boss of the class. He did not expect that Yang Yunfeng would stand up for Qin Sheng and suppress him. Now he even asked him to apologize to Qin Sheng. If he apologized, he would not be able to raise his head in front of Qin Sheng and the class in the future. He would lose face and dignity. For a proud person like him, this was definitely more uncomfortable than killing him. Therefore, Chao Kefen still did not open his mouth to apologize. He just stared at Qin Sheng and Yang Yunfeng. Qin Sheng did not say anything. He did not want to do anything to Chao Kefen. If Chao Kefen wanted to die, he could not blame him for fighting. Now that someone was standing up for him, he would just watch the show. Yang Yunfeng did not wait for Chao Kefen to speak. He turned around and looked at Qin Sheng. He said in a way that was neither humble nor arrogant, "Qin Sheng, we are all old classmates. Chao Kefen drank a little today, so he was a little impulsive and said some nonsense. Don't take it to heart. I, on behalf of our class, apologize to you." His words caused an uproar again. They had never seen Yang Yunfeng speak so politely. Moreover, in such an environment, he personally represented the class to represent Qin Sheng. What on earth was going on? Qin Sheng was in a pretty good mood today. If he was in a bad mood in the past, he would not have given Yang Yunfeng a chance to speak at all. When Chao Kefen was courting death just now, he could have already killed Chao Kefen hundreds of times. Even if Yang Yunfeng spoke now, Qin Sheng might not give Yang Yunfeng any face at all. However, Qin Sheng was in a good mood today. He did not want to leave an impression of being domineering in front of his classmate. He had already planned to deal with Chao Kefen when he left just now. Chao Kefen might continue to make trouble for him. It was not too late to deal with him later. Now that Yang Yunfeng spoke, not only on behalf of himself, but also on behalf of the class, Qin Shing naturally had to give him face. He could only reply with a smile. Ha ha ha, it's just a misunderstanding. Lao Yang, don't take it to heart. As long as he apologizes, I will pretend that nothing happened. Tut tut tut. When everyone heard this, they only felt that Qin Shing was really arrogant. However, they also found that the situation had already changed. Just now, Chao Kefan asked Qin Shing to apologize to him. Now, Chao Kefan wanted to apologize to Qin Shing. This change happened so fast. What Yang Yunfeng was most afraid of was that Qin Shing would not give him face and wanted to make things worse or put Chao Kefan to death. He did not expect Qin Shing to be so polite. Hence, without hesitation, he turned his head to look at Chao Kefan and almost roared, "Chao Kefan, I will give you one last chance. Apologize to Qin Shing." Yang Yunfeng was really angry. He was definitely doing this for Chao Kefan. However, Chao Kefan, this idiot, could not let go of his face. Yan Chaozong was a living example of whether face or life was more important. Chao Kefan was still hesitating. He was thinking whether face was more important or if it was more important to completely offend Yang Yunfeng for this matter. In the future, not to mention mingling in the class reunion, even if it was in Shanghai, Yang Yunfeng might also make trouble for him. Who asked him to be at a different level from Yang Yunfeng? Liang Shuang, who had been silent all this while, really could not stand it anymore. After all, Chao Kefan was usually considered a good person. Whether it was to friends or classmates, his reputation was quite good. It was just that sometimes he was too conceited or petty, which led to today's matter. Liang Shuang took the risk of offending Qin Shing and whispered in Chao Kefan's ear, "Yang Yunfeng is doing this for your own good. You will know in the future." Chao Kefan did not understand what Liang Shuang meant, but he could also guess what she wanted to say. Was it really as he had guessed, that Qin Shing really had a big background that even he did not know? That was why Qin Shing dared to be so presumptuous tonight. That was why Yang Yunfeng said such words, because Yang Yunfeng also did not dare to offend Qin Shing. Thinking of these possibilities, Chao Kefan finally lowered his arrogant head and apologized to Qin Shing completely. "Qin Shing, I drank too much tonight and was a little impulsive. I hope you will not take it to heart for the sake of old classmates." At this point, this farce could be considered to have come to an end. That was, Chao Kefan was defeated, and Qin Shing had the last laugh in the end. Qin Shing replied lightly, "It's okay, we are all classmates, we are all classmates." After saying this, there was no need for Qin Shing to continue to stay here. He said to everyone very politely, "Everyone, I am sorry for spoiling your fun tonight. I am here to apologize to everyone. I will also leave first. Everyone, please continue, let's get together again if there is a chance." After saying this, Qin Shing turned around and walked straight out with Xia Ding. Yang Yunfeng and Liang Shuang looked at each other for a while, and finally followed them out. Some things had to be done perfectly, otherwise, it would be a little troublesome to explain later if Qin Shing was left with doubts in his heart. When Yang Yunfeng left, he did not forget to stare fiercely at Chao Kefan a few times. He was really courting death. Fortunately, he reined in his horse before the cliff. "Let's see how you will thank me in the future." Chao Kefan sat on the chair with incomparable disappointment. In the end, he poured himself a glass of wine, raised his head and drank it in one gulp. All the face he had in front of his classmates was completely lost today. He felt that he had lost a lot of things in an instant, but he still did not understand why. He just wanted to know the truth. Therefore, after a few minutes of reflection, Chao Kefan also chased after them. When Qin Shing and Xia Ding just walked to the door of the hotel, Yang Yunfeng and Liang Shuang had already chased after them. At this time, Chang Baji and the others had not yet arrived. Naturally, Qin Shing could not avoid them and also wanted to find out what they wanted to do. Therefore, Qin Shing glanced at Xia Ding. Xia Ding was very sensible and went not far away to smoke. He also called his wife while he was at it. Yang Yunfeng said directly, I really did not expect that young Master Qin would be our classmate from Fudan University. It seems that you know my identity. Qin Xing was no longer as calm as before. At this moment, he fully released his aura. There was a kind of overwhelming aura that made Yang Yunfeng and Liang Shuang a little breathless. This seemed to be the most real Qin Xing. Yang Yunfeng and Liang Shuang could not help but be a little nervous. Yang Yunfeng took a few deep breaths and said, I heard it from my friends before. Recently, I heard it from Wei Li in Hangzhou. Wei Li and you should be classmates of Tsinghua University's Economics and Management seminar. I have a good relationship with him. Every time he comes to Shanghai, he will find me. Oh, it turns out that you know Wei Li. No wonder. Qin Xing asked meaningfully, since you know my identity, why didn't you greet me earlier? Why did you only show up just now? Yang Yunfeng did not hide this point. He said honestly, I am a more cautious person. I will not rashly take the initiative, because I am afraid that Qin Xing will think too much. If Wei Li was here to introduce me, I would be very happy to make a friend like young Master Qin. After all, we are classmates from Fudan University. Yang Yunfeng's explanation was reasonable and not far-fetched. If he really lied to Qin Xing, as long as Qin Xing called Wei Li later, he would be able to figure out what was going on. After all, Yang Yunfeng said that he had a good relationship with Wei Li. Ha ha, Yunfeng, your character is not like Uncle Yang. I met Uncle Yang at Uncle Wu's house last time. He was very bold and generous, Qin Xing said with a smile. He had already sorted out the line tonight. He felt that Yang Yunfeng's appearance at the end had considered all aspects of factors, whether it was for him or for Chao Kefen and his classmates. He had made a balance, so he would joke like this. Yang Yunfeng was not surprised that Qin Xing had met his father. He just replied, My character is like my mother's. But this is also good. You can be liked in front of the elders. No wonder you can be the best among our classmates, Qin Xing said with a smile, which could be considered as affirming Yang Yunfeng's ability and so on. Yang Yunfeng replied politely, It's just a higher starting point. If it were other classmates, their achievements might not be lower than mine. Qin Xing nodded with a smile and said nothing more. At this time, Yang Yunfeng was a little worried about tonight's matter. After all, he did not know Qin Xing well enough. What he knew was Qin Xing's means in some aspects. If Chao Kefen really wanted to die, Qin Xing could kill him in a minute. So he tentatively asked, Chao Kefen's side? I am not that stingy, Qin Xing said casually. Yang Yunfeng let out a long breath and said, That's good. Qin Xing did not want to say anything more to Yang Yunfeng. He turned to look at Liang Shuang, who had been standing there. Liang Shuang, who used to be a girl, was now a young woman. Her cold look was not interesting. Qin Xing found it funny and said, When did you know? Liang Shuang said in a low voice, Just now. No wonder. I was wondering why you didn't ask me to drink tonight. Qin Xing nodded silently and said, Why? Do you think I am not the same as before? After all, Liang Shuang and Qin Xing had other stories. Qin Xing would not be angry no matter what she said. She said softly, I didn't notice it in the afternoon. Now that I think about it carefully, I know why. It must have been hard for you these years, right? Whether it was Yang Yunfeng or Liang Shuang, they could get in touch with higher levels. They still knew about those things about the Qin family. It was just that they chose to ignore it and did not ask about these things. However, the rumors were so spread, the Qin family must be in a difficult situation now. That was why Liang Shuang said so. I am still me, the Qin Xing you used to know. I was, and I hope I will be. As for whether it is easy or not, it is too pretentious. Who lives easy? Qin Xing laughed at himself. Liang Shuang did not know what to say. After thinking about it, she could only say, Then I hope everything goes well for you. Thank you, Qin Shing said politely. At this time, Chang Baji and the Qin family's bodyguards came over. There were a total of 3 cars. This was already a big show. After all, the Qin family was in such a situation now. Chang Baji was in charge of Qin Shing's safety, so he naturally did not dare to be careless. Qin Shing looked at Yang Yunfeng and Liang Shuang and said softly with a smile, "Let's not talk about this anymore. I have to go. Let's meet again if there is a chance. I will have to trouble you for tonight's matter." Yang Yunfeng understood that there were some follow-up matters that needed him to deal with. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, young Master Qin." Then, he and Liang Shuang watched Qin Shing and Xia Ding get into the car and leave. This scene was coincidentally seen by Chao Kefen, who was chasing after them. When he saw this scene, he could not help but be a little shocked, as if he had already understood. After Qin Shing's motorcade disappeared, Yang Yunfeng looked away and said half-jokingly, "The Qin family's young master's extravagance is really not ordinary. If you want, you can too," Liang Shuang said impatiently. Yang Yunfeng did not know why Liang Shuang was unhappy, so he could only mumble, "It is better to be low-key." When the 2 of them turned around and were about to go back, they saw Chao Kefen standing behind them, who was a little dazed. Yang Yunfeng stared at Chao Kefen with a very unhappy look and sneered, "This should be the closest you have ever been to death." When Chao Kefen heard this, his heart trembled a little. He asked with fear and trepidation, "Brother Yang, he is—" Yang Yunfeng directly replied without hesitation, "You are not qualified to know." Chapter 868. Chao Kefen was very surprised by Yang Yunfeng's actions tonight. He did not know why Yang Yunfeng did that. Why did he stand up for Qin Shing instead of standing on his side? Yang Yunfeng definitely did not have any interaction with Qin Shing. Otherwise, he would not have seen them talking before. However, Yang Yunfeng and Qin Shing had been friends for 7 or 8 years. That should not be the case. This was also the reason why Chao Kefen had chased after them. He had to figure out what was going on. When he came out and saw Qin Shing chatting happily with Yang Yunfeng and Liang Shuang, he had more or less confirmed his previous guess, which was that Qin Shing's background might not be simple. Otherwise, Yang Yunfeng would be so polite and respectful to him, and Liang Shuang would be able to let go of all her pride. Because of her in-law's background, Liang Shuang did not take anyone seriously. These things were not pretended, but came from the bottom of her heart. This was how society was, status determined everything. In the end, when Chao Kefen saw Qin Shing get into the Bentley and watched Qin Shing's luxurious motorcade leave, he was even more aware that Qin Shing was really not simple. Even Yang Yunfeng did not dare to act rashly. He was really seeking his own death tonight, especially Yang Yunfeng's last 2 sentences. "This is the closest you've ever been to death. Don't you have the right to know?" The fact that these 2 sentences came out of Yang Yunfeng's mouth already showed that Qin Shing's identity was far from what he could compare with. Therefore, Chao Kefen really broke down. Yang Yunfeng was too lazy to talk about these trivial things with Chao Kefen. If he was not convinced, he could go and find trouble with Qin Shing. At that time, even if he died, he would not go to see Qin Shing off. If he came to his senses and understood what was going on, it did not matter whether Chao Kefen thanked him or not. He did not need Chao Kefen's gratitude. On the contrary, he had to thank Chao Kefen, because Chao Kefen had helped him get in touch with Qin Shing. Judging from the final result, Qin Shing's impression of him was not bad. Therefore, he was the one who had reaped the benefits today. This was more profitable than a business deal, so Yang Yunfeng was in a good mood. After Yang Yunfeng went in, Liang Shuang saw Chao Kefen, who was in a daze, and felt sorry for him. She walked over slowly and comforted him. "Anyway, it's over. You can't afford to offend Qin Shing. Go back and reflect on yourself. If it weren't for Yang Yunfeng this time, You might have really caused trouble. What about next time? After saying that, Liang Shuang went in. She had accepted everything calmly, so she was looking forward to meeting Qin Xing again. At least this man, who had once made her fall in love with him, did not let her down. On the way back to Pudong, Xia Ding asked in confusion, "Are we really going to let it go? Did you let Chao Kefen and Yu Hai go? Then what do you want to do?" Qin Xing squinted his eyes and replied. He really did not think much about it. Xia Ding muttered in a low voice, "This is not your style." "I'm in a good mood today," Qin Xing said casually. After all, these were all his classmates. Was he really going to fight with them? In the future, he would not even have classmates anymore. Besides, he could understand Chao Kefen's motive. It was nothing more than that he had fallen in love with Su Qin in the past but could not get her. Now that he met his rival in love, he wanted to vent his anger. Wasn't most people like this? He was not a bad person. At least he used to like Su Qin, but he did not mess around. Even when Qin Xing was not in Shanghai, he did not use his family background to force Su Qin. He just liked her. Moreover, he had helped Su Qin before, so Qin Xing would not fight with him. After the class reunion, Qin Xing still lived a carefree life. Most of the time, he would go to Sinan Road to accompany the old lady. In the morning and in the evening, he would push the old lady for a walk. During this period, he also had 2 meals with his cousins. They did not talk about anything about the Qin family, but just talked about daily life. Qin Xing also took time out to accompany Lin Su to work. At first, Lin Su was a little embarrassed, but later she got used to it. However, the whole company knew that Qin Xing was Lin Su's boyfriend. Everyone was guessing Qin Xing's identity and background. They wondered what kind of man could be worthy of their goddess Lin. The women were still fine, but the men were devastated when they heard the news. The goddess that many of them had a crush on was taken by someone else just like that. Many of them lost their wits and were heartbroken for a while. Some of them even asked for leave directly. Qin Xing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Didn't they know that every goddess had to return to being ordinary in the end? Of course, Qin Xing also went to see Hao Lei and Han Bing. Since that day, the relationship between Hao Lei and Han Bing had a breakthrough again. Maybe they had become a boyfriend and girlfriend, but they had not told Qin Xing yet. Qin Xing did not want to worry about it. When the time was right, maybe they would tell him. Anyway, he had a lot of time. Qin Xing also followed Bao Fan to drink red wine and play golf. He could also get some news from Bao Fan. For example, the 2 men in Shenzhen and the Northeast were ready to make trouble. Fortunately, Uncle Gongsun was there to suppress them. If there was no Uncle Gongsun, with the wild ambition of these people, they might not recognize him, the young master whom they had never met. Unknowingly it was August. The biggest event of this month might be Yu Kefi's marriage. Originally, Qin Xing and Xia Ding were the best men, but Qin Xing did not want to show his face in public. In the end, Xia Ding was the best man, and the rest of the best men were Yu Kefi's childhood friends. But there was still half a month before the wedding, so there was no hurry. When the time came, they could go directly from Shanghai. Maybe it was because he had stayed in Shanghai for too long. Qin Xing wanted to find a place to go for a walk. He felt depressed staying in Shanghai every day. In the end, he chose Shitong between Suzhou and Shitong because Qin wanted to go to Shitong. This was also Qin Xing's promise to take Qin out to relax before school started. After all, Qin would not have time after school started, and Qin Xing could not go too far away. In the end, he chose the ancient town of Shitong, which was very close to Shanghai. The 4 ancient towns in Zhejiang were Wuzhen, Shitong, Nanshuan, and Anchang. Of course, Wuzhen was the most famous, followed by Shitong, which was relatively quieter. If it were in the past, Qin Xing might not like this kind of place very much. However, Shitong was so close to Shanghai. It was just a 2-hour drive. It was good to stay there quietly for a few days. Therefore, Qin Sheng set off with Qing Er. This time, Jiang Xianbang did not be a third wheel. Although Qin Sheng took the initiative to invite him, Jiang Xianbang could not wait for Qin Sheng and Qing Er to be alone. How could he not be sensible? In the end, of course, Chang Baji and the others also followed. After all, Qin Sheng had the most enemies in Zhujiang. In the evening, they arrived at the ancient town of Shitong. The place where they stayed was arranged by Jiang Xianbang. It was said that his friend specially bought a house in Shitong. On weekdays, he only entertained his own people. It was managed by a 5-star hotel in Shitong, but it only received his friends or friends of friends. Compared with those messy homestays or overly busy hotels, this was naturally the best choice. Shitong belonged to Jiaxing, which was located at the junction of Jiangsu, Zhujiang and Shanghai. It was one of the first historical and cultural towns and one of the birthplaces of Wuyue culture. Naturally, there were many tourists on weekdays, not to mention now that it was the peak season of the summer vacation. In fact, the most remarkable thing about these ancient towns in Jiangnan was that these towns had maintained intact architectural complexes of the Ming and Qing dynasties. Pavilions, terraces, small bridges, and flowing water, in addition to the characteristic local culture, naturally attracted a lot of people in the bustling city. Think about it, what kind of scene would it be if you met a Jiangnan beauty in a cheongsam in such a place, holding an umbrella in the slanting wind and drizzle? It was evening. The sun was setting in the west, and the afterglow of the setting sun covered the entire Shitong. It was really rare for the weather to be good. How could Qin Sheng miss such good weather? Therefore, Qin Sheng was going to take Qing Er out for a walk. It just so happened that they could have dinner outside. Relatively speaking, they still liked these local specialties. After eating, they could find a small bar with a resident singer, listen to songs, drink wine, and talk about love in the night. It was also interesting. Qing Er said that she wanted to change clothes suitable for wearing in the ancient town, so Qin Sheng took the initiative to go out and wait outside. In fact, he did not need to go out. After all, with their current relationship, there was no need to avoid these things. It was just that Qin Sheng was afraid that Qing Er would feel embarrassed. A few minutes later, when Qing Er walked out of the room, not to mention Qin Sheng, everyone outside was stunned. Because at this moment, Qing Er was really beautiful. Even the Jiangnan beauty could not be compared to her. A well-cut gray cheongsam showed Qing Er's tall figure vividly and vividly. Such a curvy figure was very suitable for this kind of cheongsam, especially Qing Er's slender and beautiful legs, which were faintly visible and made people have unlimited imagination. Fortunately, the slit of this cheongsam was not exaggerated. Otherwise, Qin Sheng would have to let Qing Er go in to change clothes. He did not want to let others feast their eyes on her. With her long hair tied up and a little makeup, Qing Er, who was originally otherworldly, became even more extraordinary at this moment. It was as if this woman should only exist in heaven, and this woman must have come from a painting. It could be said that Qing Er's temperament had been perfectly integrated with this cheongsam. The most important thing was that Qing Er was beautiful. Qin Sheng was already stunned. Fortunately, this was his woman. If this was someone else's woman, how envious, jealous, and hateful he would be. Qing Er walked slowly to Qin Sheng and said a little embarrassedly, "What's wrong?" Qin Sheng hurriedly replied awkwardly, "Nothing, nothing." He scolded himself in his heart. He was not a young man who had not seen the world for a long time. How could he be so useless? He did not even have this little self-control. Qing Er took the initiative to take Qin Sheng's arm and said, "Then let's go." Qin Sheng took a deep breath and was extremely proud in his heart. When Qin Sheng and Qing Er walked on the streets of Shitong ancient town, Zhao Anji, who was far away in Changbai Mountain, received a call from an old friend in Beijing. There was finally some movement in Beijing. Chapter 869. Another danger. It had been more than 2 months since Qin Chang'an's accident. So far, there was no news about Qin Chang'an. The Qin family and other people still didn't know where Qin Chang'an had been taken and what had happened to him. How could the Qin family not worry? But it was useless. No matter how hard they tried, they could only choose the Zhu family's strategy. The reason why the Zhu family dared to ask the Qin family to wait was that they could guarantee that Qin Chang'an was still alive and everything was fine. After all, Qin Chang'an was such a famous figure. If he disappeared without a trace, it would be terrible news for many people. Now, there was finally news from Beijing, which had been silent for so long. It was already August. The weather in the south was still very hot, but Changbai Mountain was a summer resort. Zhao Anji received a call when she was jogging. Apart from Nangong, there were 2 bodyguards with her. After answering the call, Zhao Anji was very excited. After such a long time, she could finally see Qin Chang'an. As long as she could see Qin Chang'an, maybe things would turn for the better. Therefore, Zhao Anji was naturally not interested in continuing to run. She started to run along the tree-lined path at the foot of the mountain. She planned to take Qin Ran and Qin Jing back to Beijing. She would wait until they returned to Beijing and met Qin Chang'an. Moreover, she was not sure whether the news was true or not. She did not want to cause too much of a stir. Zhao Anji jogged every day, so she was quite familiar with the tree-lined path. Usually, there were not many passers-by at night. The hotel's security was quite strict, so there was no danger. But today, when she answered the call and ran back, an accident happened. Not far ahead, under a tree, a man with an indistinct face stood there quietly. He was motionless like a ghost, directly blocking Zhao Anji's way. Anyone could feel the impending danger. The 2 bodyguards of the Qin family instantly stood in front of Zhao Anji, but the man still stood there unmoved. "Who are you?" the bodyguards of the Qin family scolded. The man did not answer. He still stood there, staring at Zhao Anji with his dark eyes, like a lone wolf looking for prey in the dark. Zhao Anji was a little surprised, but she was not nervous. At her age, she had already experienced a lot of ups and downs, so she was already used to it. Moreover, when she returned to the country, she had already made all the preparations. She had already expected what she would encounter, so at this moment she was very calm. Apart from that, there was another person who was very calm, and that was Nangong, who had followed Zhao Anji out. Nangong was standing beside Zhao Anji at this moment, staring at the man in the distance with a gloomy expression. She had already observed the surrounding environment, and it seemed that there was only one man. Since the man dared to come here alone, he was definitely not simple, so Nangong did not dare to let her guard down. This was because she had to protect Zhao Anji. She was the only elder in the Qin family who could make decisions. If something were to happen to Zhao Anji, the Qin family would really be in chaos. Seeing that the man did not answer, the 2 bodyguards also realized that the man was dangerous, but they still wanted to step forward and question him. At this moment, Nangong directly stopped the bodyguards of the Qin family and said, "You send Auntie back to the hotel. Leave this to me." Nangong did not want to waste time. This place was not far from the hotel, and it was the only place where they could take action. As long as the bodyguards of the Qin family sent Auntie back to the hotel, everything would be safe. After all, there were other bodyguards of the Qin family in the hotel, and the security of the hotel was very strict. Most importantly, Zhuang Zhou was still there. The 2 bodyguards of the Qin family looked at each other and said, "Miss Nangong, be careful." They were the bodyguards of the Qin family, and Nangong was their person in charge. This time, Nangong was naturally in charge of the security of the people of the Qin family in Changbai Mountain. At this moment, since Nangong had already given the order, they naturally would do as she said. "Be careful." Zhao Anji didn't close her tibia, she twisted her Rui star. The two bodyguards of the Qin family escorted Zhao Anji to leave from the lawn on the right side. Seeing that Zhao Anji was about to leave, the man finally could not help but take action. He went directly to Zhao Anji. Of course, Nangong would not let him be presumptuous. Without hesitation, he also rushed up to him. A fierce battle was inevitable. The bodyguards of the Qin family did not dawdle and immediately escorted Zhao Anji to safety. On the way, they had been acting strangely. A few minutes' journey seemed like a few years' journey. They were afraid that something unexpected would happen. After all, they were the bodyguards of the Qin family. Even if something happened to them, they would not complain. However, they could not let anything happen to the master of the Qin family. Fortunately, it was a safe journey. After entering the hotel, they finally felt relieved. Before Zhao Anji made any arrangements, the two bodyguards immediately informed the security of the hotel to rush over. At the same time, they also contacted other bodyguards of the Qin family to help. After everything was done, they finally felt relieved. In the hotel, Qin Jing was watching TV series, while Qin Ran was still working. Although she came to Changbai Mountain to relax and avoid the summer, she still had to manage the affairs of the Chang'an school. However, when she saw the auntie and Zhuang Zhou at the same time, especially the auntie's nervous look, Qin Ran knew that something had happened. After some inquiries, Qin Ran could not help but feel a little annoyed. Who was it this time? However, when Zhao Anji told Qin Ran the news of the phone call just now, Qin Ran paid more attention to the situation in Beijing. She immediately discussed with the auntie about the countermeasures. As for Nangong, Zhuang Zhou would handle it. After hearing the auntie's suggestion, Qin Ran replied in a low voice, "Auntie, do you mean that we should go back to Beijing overnight?" Zhao Anji nodded silently and said, "No matter what the situation in Beijing is, let's go back first. We definitely can't stay in Changbai Mountain." Qin Ran asked casually, "Do we need to inform Qin Xing and ask him to go back to Beijing?" Zhao Anji thought for a while and said, "Don't worry. Let's go back and figure it out first. Otherwise, it will only make Xing anxious. Even if he comes back in a hurry, it will be useless. If we really need him to come back, we should ask him to arrange things in Shanghai first." After hearing the auntie's words, Qin Ran agreed. Otherwise, if she informed Qin Xing now without knowing anything, he would definitely rush back in a hurry. In this way, it would be easier for something to happen. "Auntie, someone attacked us tonight. I'm worried that something will happen to Qin Xing." Qin Ran was more worried about this aspect. It was impossible for those people to act unilaterally. Zhao Anji was still calm as she said, "I don't think so. Qin Xing is now in Shanghai, which is the sphere of influence of your grandmother's family. At this time, I'm afraid that the Zhu family will be in trouble if they attack in Shanghai at this time. At the very least, Xing has always been cautious. What's more, he has Chang Baji and the others by his side. I don't think anything will happen to him. When we arrive in Beijing, you can call him casually and ask him." "Okay, then I'll listen to you, Auntie." Qin Ran no longer hesitated and said. Zhao Anji followed her and said, "Then let's pack up." They began to pack up. After leaving Changbai Mountain this time, they didn't know when they would come back again. It would be difficult for them to leave Beijing in a short time. They hoped that everything would go smoothly this time. When the people of the Qin family had packed up, Nangong still hadn't come back. There was no news from him at all. Zhao Anji and Qin Ran inevitably felt a little worried. Qin Ran looked at Zhuang Zhou and asked, "Uncle Zhuang Zhou, will he be okay?" "Nangong is not that simple. Don't worry too much." Zhuang Zhou still recognized Nangong's strength. At the same time, he also knew Nangong's character. It was very likely that he was too eager to fight and chased out. During this period, Nangong seemed to be very calm. However, after Qin Chang'an's accident, she was full of resentment. At this time, someone actually dared to attack the Qin family in front of her. How could she bear it? She must definitely find out who was behind it. Naturally, she wanted to keep him alive. Zhao Anji frowned and said, "Call him and ask him." As soon as Zhao Anji finished speaking, the bodyguards of the Qin family called, telling them that Nangong was fine. They were on their way back to the hotel, and asked them not to worry. More than 10 minutes later, Nangong returned to the hotel suite with many bodyguards of the Qin family. When they saw the several bloodstains on Nangong's body, Zhao Anji and Qin Ran were both shocked. Qin Ran ran over in a hurry and asked, "Nangong, are you okay?" Nangong shook his head and said, "I'm fine. These are all minor injuries. It's a pity that he ran away. Otherwise, I would definitely be able to find out who ordered him." As long as Nangong was fine, it was good. Although Zhao Anji and Qin Ran also wanted to know who it was nothing more than those people. It was useless to pursue it now. Even if they knew it, what could they do? Qin Ran was relieved and said, "It's good that you're fine. It's good that you're fine." Zhao Anji said in a low voice, "Nangong, then go and pack up. We'll go back to Beijing now." Nangong did not say anything. He just nodded and went directly to the room to pack up. Half an hour later, the people of the Qin family immediately set off for the airport and took the nearest plane back to Beijing. The little episode just now had been forgotten. However, the following problem was that since the other side chose to attack at this time, it meant that they might also know what was going on in Beijing. At this time, it was completely dark in the ancient town of Shitong. Qin Sheng did not know what had happened in Changbai Mountain, nor did he know what was going on in Beijing. He was strolling on the streets of the ancient town with Qin. They walked through one old street after another. However, no matter where they went, Qin was definitely the most beautiful scenery tonight. The number of people turning their heads made Qin Sheng feel a little scared. Chang Baji took Ujiba and the others to scatter around Qin Sheng and Qin. They were always vigilant about the situation around them, but they would not disturb them. It was just that this bowl of dog food was also very satisfying for them. However, they had long been used to it. Qin walked very slowly, as if she was not in a hurry. She was not interested in those snacks, but she liked those interesting handicrafts very much. Every time she encountered something interesting, she would take Qin Sheng in. Qin Sheng would accompany her tirelessly. When buying things, he would even shamelessly bargain with the boss. Even the boss wanted to say, "Big brother, you brought such a beautiful wife out, and you dilly-dally with me for such a small amount of money. Aren't you afraid of losing face?" Qin did not care about anything. She left everything to Qin Sheng, but she never let go of Qin Sheng's hand. When she was happy, she would act coquettishly to Qin Sheng like a little girl and gently beat Qin Sheng's chest. It seemed that she was getting more and more used to being so natural around Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng also constantly teased and amused Qin. As long as he saw Qin smile, all his troubles would disappear. When they came out of a musical instrument shop, there seemed to be something interesting happening in front of them. A lot of onlookers gathered on the road. Qin wanted to go and have a look, so Qin Sheng took her to walk there at a moderate pace. At this time, danger quietly came. A man with a dagger unexpectedly came under the cover of the night and the lively crowd. Battlefield Literature. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.